The story begins inside a game, in the forest of Walbury, where there was an extremely wounded warrior, because he and his army had been completely decimated by the army of the woman sitting on the throne, and one of her subordinates commented that the target still hadn't appeared. The woman on the throne ordered the warrior to be killed at once, and as the executioner prepared to carry out the order with an axe, someone appeared and interrupted the blow, knocking the executioner out of the way. That person was Jae-hyun, who had appeared there to help the defeated army, and apparently he was the real target the other army was looking for. When they all went at Jae-hyun, he had no trouble taking down every single person who came his way. And as he fought, he questioned whether they really thought they could win on numbers alone, making it clear that even with the advantage, they still weren't good enough. The name he used was Herokiller, but his real name was Jae-hyun, a member of the Haho Mask Guild, known by the title of Herokiller. The army he had helped was sorry and apologized, saying that the ambush in the forest was their fault because they hadn't thought things through. Herokiller said that there was no reason to apologize, held out his hand to them, and told them that everything was fine, and that now they needed to get up. Everyone was moved, and he explained that it wasn't their fault, but the fault of those pathetic losers who can't fight fair, saying this while staring at the woman on the throne. This woman was called Sira, but her real name was Chae Seol-yeon, a powerful member of the Thunder Hunters Guild, known by the title of Queen of Thunder. Herokiller said it was funny to hear that coming from her, who was always getting beaten up by the same trash she despised. Sira then told him to watch his words, or he'd end up regretting it. Herokiller activated his inventory and equipped himself with his real armor and weapon, saying that regret was the stuff of wimps like her. Angrily, Sura ordered the army to kill him, and Herokiller only replied that they'd never learn, because people like them would never be able to kill him. However, at that moment, Herokiller was stabbed in the back by his own companions. He lost a lot of blood, and the system alerted him that he was in critical condition. The group commander apologized, saying that everyone there needed to survive, and that it was nothing personal. As he bled out, Herokiller couldn't believe what was happening. Sura began to laugh at him, saying that he was really pathetic for thinking that they would fall for that little friendship act. To her, friendship meant nothing when money was involved. Sura said that she would take him out of that game forever, and if she managed to kill him every time he logged in, he would never be able to play again, because she had heard that he worked with that. If he lost the game, he lost everything. Without it, he was just useless trash. When he tried to get up to fight back, he was hit again by the same people he considered friends, and he could hardly move. Sura thanked everyone for a job well done, and Herokiller asked why they had done it, as that guild meant everything to him. One of the members replied coldly that they were being paid millions to kill him, and asked what he expected them to do if they refused. Herokiller wondered if, after all he had done for them, after they had called him family, this really was the end of him, and then he died. The system informed him that he had been restricted for 48 hours before he could log in again. He then woke up at home, inside the virtual reality capsule, and thought that he had lost everything. It was then explained that Warlord was a game that dominated the global rankings, a virtual reality-based game with advanced artificial intelligence and large investments. It was because of Warlord that Jae-hyun went from being nothing to someone who was truly respected. And it was within this game that he found what he believed to be his new family. At least until now. Now, Jae-hyun thought that it was all unforgivable, so he ran out of the house, thinking he was going to kill them all at that very moment, wondering if those guys were aware of everything he'd had to do to get there. They really thought they could treat him like that, like he was disposable. If he had known that everything would end up like this, he would never have wasted his time helping those people. But as was typical of his luck, he was hit by a truck and probably died right there. And to make matters worse, the person he tried to call didn't pick up. Jae-hyun wondered if, in all possible ways, he had been hit by a garbage truck. He didn't think he could die like this. Not now, not like this. Those bastards who betrayed him just for money, that bastard who destroyed everything, he wouldn't let it go. He would get his revenge. And sometime later, he was being reconnected to the game. The player Herokiller had returned to Warlord, and his first challenge was to complete the tutorial, survive against the Minotaur, and get out of the labyrinth. He wondered why he was back at the tutorial, and if it really was the Warlord, while other people shouted for the noob to get up before he died, as the Minotaur wasn't happy at all. They said it was impossible to defeat that monster alone, that they needed at least 3 players to face it. Someone asked why Herokiller wasn't on the front line, but he just wondered why that Minotaur was still there, since it had been removed 5 years ago for being too difficult to kill. Another player replied that the Warlord had only been released 10 months earlier, and Herokiller, confused, asked how that was possible. The others found him strange and told him to forget what he was saying and just concentrate on the fight. But Herokiller didn't listen and charged at the Minotaur with his sword, leaving everyone shocked by his attitude. They said he was mad that he would die like that because it was impossible to defeat the monster alone. With great skill, Herokiller managed to dodge the first blow and made several precise cuts across the Minotaur's body. body, unleashing rapid and continuous attacks until he killed it with a single final blow. Everyone was surprised, wondering who that player was who had defeated the Minotaur so easily. They tried to approach Hirkan, saying that they were skilled players and asking if he wanted to join their guild, but Hirkan remembered everything that had happened the last time he had trusted someone, and then realized that he had understood something very important. Without hesitation, he killed the two players right there, slitting their necks mercilessly. He realized that if he trusted anyone else in his life, he would deserve to go to hell. The Hirkan, known as the Herokiller, was back. When Jae-hyun logged out of the game, he realized he was inside a capsule, but it wasn't his home capsule. He was in the V-Gear store, the name of the virtual reality equipment. He remembered that 5 years ago, he didn't have the money to buy his own V-Gear, so he played the demo of the game in that very store. That could only mean one thing. He really had gone back in time. If it was true, then he couldn't waste any more time. He had to take advantage of the knowledge he had of the future. He approached the sales assistant, took out his card, and said he wanted to buy the V-Gear immediately. The employee started to process the payment, but informed him that there was insufficient funds. He was confused, but soon remembered that, at the time, he didn't have any money because he hadn't started playing Warlord for real yet. He was just a failure. Jae-hyun wondered what he should do now. If he was only going to save money by playing in the store, it would take too long. It was at that moment that he heard an advertisement on the store's television, with a firm voice asking why hesitate, saying that the strong are never afraid of a good challenge and that hesitating was a luxury on the battlefield. It was an advertisement starring Surae, the Queen of Thunder, made especially for the Warlord. Jae-hyun was completely silent when he saw that Surae commercial on the big screen, clearly remembering the woman who had called him pathetic trash in his last moments of the game. He thought he wasn't in a position to choose much now. So when he returned home at the end of the day, his V-Gear was already installed. The technician informed him that everything was ready for use, and he decided to leave right then and there. Jae-hyun thought that the only way he could get money was to use that damn card, remembering the time he borrowed 10 million from an unreliable group known as Aota, who had even put a knife between his fingers and made it clear that if he didn't pay, he knew exactly what would happen. Even though he was nervous, Jae-hyun knew that this was his only option. But none of that mattered anymore, because even if he had to crawl through hell, he would get his revenge. As he logged on to the game, Jae-hyun thought that he would become stronger and finish off everyone who had betrayed him. And then he finally logged in. The system welcomed the Hirkan player back to the world of Warlord, and he thought that it had been a long time since he had last set foot there. It was time to meet someone again, but he had even forgotten her name. Ariadne, that was it. It was then that a woman appeared as if she were a deity, congratulating him on completing the tutorial. Her name was Ariadne, and she was there to guide him through the class selection. She explained that he needed to choose his basic class, and with her golden divine power, she revealed the 3 options available, saying that the skills developed with the basic class would determine his advanced class in the future. The first option was Warrior, the front line, a fighter specialized in weapons and intense combat, ideal for hand-to-hand battles full of adrenaline. Hirkan thought he had been a warrior last time. It was a good choice for leveling up at first, but later in the game, playing alone with this class became increasingly difficult. The second option was the Priest, a support who strengthens allies with blessings and healing abilities, but he immediately rejected this idea, saying that he would never waste his time helping others again. Ariadne then said that there was only one last option left, revealing that perhaps his path was a little darker. A divine power entered his body, and the system confirmed that the basic class had been chosen. He was immediately teleported to the class tower. There, Hirkan found himself in front of an immense staircase, at the top of which stood a wizard, a strange-looking guru, who welcomed him enthusiastically. This wizard's name was Golko, and he would be his guide on the path of magic. Golko asked what kind of magic he would like to learn, and Hirkan answered without hesitation that he wanted black magic. There was a moment of silence, and then Golko tried to confirm that he meant the magic of the wilderness, saying that his ears weren't very good, but Hirkan clearly repeated that he wanted black magic. Golko became suspicious and asked where he had heard about it, explaining that dark magic was powerful, but it consumed the target's soul. Even so, Hirkan said that he knew exactly what he was getting into, and that he was fully aware of the choice he was making. He thought that black magic was perfect for his new purpose, and Golko, nervous, could hardly believe it, but decided to go ahead. It was then that Golko ripped open his own face, revealing revealing a skull. In fact, he was a black magician himself. Gokko said that it had been a long time since a young man had chosen that path, and if Herokiller was really ready, he should touch the book. But he also warned him that this path would destroy his heart and soul. Herokiller replied that he wanted to start soon, apologized for being in a hurry, but said that his heart was already completely destroyed. Gokko let out a long, evil laugh, saying that Herokiller really was an interesting person. Then the power of dark magic invaded Herokiller's body and soul. He remembered a legendary video from his past life where a player with the Necromancer class completed a dungeon alone, leading an army of undead. Herokiller thought that it was exactly this kind of power that he needed now, and the system successfully confirmed that he had become a Necromancer. At the moment, he was just a novice Necromancer and had received the skill called Bone Fragment. Herokiller activated the skill and summoned his first bone fragment, a small skull-shaped amulet. When he threw it on the ground, it bounced like a little ball until it hit the ground. The system then announced that a skeletal warrior infused with magic was about to be born. Slowly, the skeleton began to rise, and Herokiller thought that this time he would give his all as a necromancer. There, at last, was his first skeleton warrior standing, ready to fight. Herokiller commented that it was about time to start, and imagined that there must be a dungeon nearby. But when he looked back, he saw that his skeleton's head had fallen to the ground. The two of them were silent, and Herokiller wondered what was going on. The next moment, he was transported through a portal and entered the initial training dungeon. He thought that the skeletons from his past life weren't as clumsy as this one. He couldn't understand why the performance was so bad. He then decided to analyze its ability. The bone fragment had an F proficiency, which allowed it to summon just one warrior unit with a basic function: to infuse mana into the bones to animate them. Herokiller concluded that the problem must be his low proficiency, so he knew he needed to level up quickly. Just then, he heard a roar in the background and thought that this would be the ideal moment to test his skill. A training monster appeared, a coal wolf. Herokiller remembered that coal wolves weren't very strong, but they had plenty of speed, which made them perfect for testing combat performance. He then used the bone fragment again and threw his skeleton towards the enemy. This time, the skeleton managed to stay upright, detected the enemies, and got into combat position, even intimidating the wolves who hesitated to attack. Herokiller ordered the skeleton to kill the enemies, and it set off without any fear. After all, it was just a skeleton. To Herokiller's surprise, he was doing better than expected, moving quickly and confidently. Herokiller thought that perhaps reaching the maximum level wouldn't be so difficult. However, as soon as the skeleton touched the wolves, it was immediately destroyed. The body turned to dust, the skull rolled to Herokiller's feet, and the poor skeleton even looked sad. Herokiller thought that it couldn't be real, that the skill couldn't be that weak, so he decided to open the more detailed description of the skill, and the system explained that the summoned skeletons used a self-learning system to improve their abilities, and that the user needed to do one in the combat mode: defense, attack, or special action. Herokiller realized that he had forgotten to set the skeleton's mode, so he selected defense mode. Meanwhile, the wolves played with the bones of the poor warrior, who finally went into defensive mode, trying to protect himself. Herokiller could hardly believe his eyes. He then thought to test the special action mode, and at the same moment, the skeleton began to dance enthusiastically. This caused the wolves to start dancing too. Herokiller concluded that now he was really screwed, and remembered that, after all, Gokko had warned him. Herokiller thought it could only be a nightmare, a horrible situation. He was anxious, shaking all over, and at that moment, he discovered that the character deletion option was unavailable. Newly created accounts couldn't delete characters for 3 months, and that's when he realized how big a mess he was in. He couldn't delete the account, he couldn't change class, and he still had to pay the loan shark and the rent. He thought that maybe being hit by another truck would solve everything. He wondered why so many things went wrong on his path. Every time he thought he was making progress, everything would fall apart and he'd be back to square one. And on top of that, he had to deal with that useless skeleton next to him, who was now punching the air pretending to be doing something useful. Herokiller asked the skeleton to stop doing that, because it was only making the situation worse. He wondered how the necromancer from his past life could control so many skeletons at the same time. It was then that he remembered what the skill description said. Skeletons could improve over time because they had a learning system, and he himself knew how to fight. What if the skeleton was watching and learning? After all, it had seen the moment when Herokiller defeated the coal wolves, so maybe it could evolve from that. Determined to test this theory, Herokiller took a stick and placed it in the little skeleton's hand, saying that the skeleton was lucky to have a master like him. Even if he didn't look it, he had already been called a genius at the game. He was responsible for training an entire guild, and if there was one thing the skeleton needed to learn, it was combat. He said that if he didn't dodge, he would die. So he went for him and threw a punch, knocking the skeleton down with one blow. They repeated this process countless times. The skeleton kept getting hit, but over time, the blows began to hurt less. Herokiller explained that he shouldn't stay on the ground every time he was hit, that he needed to dodge first and counterattack later. He said that any opening should be taken without hesitation. Soon the skeleton showed a determined look, as if it was finally ready for a real fight, and so he set off once again to attack the coal wolves. With agility, he dodged the first blow and counterattacked straight into the neck of one of the wolves, then hit the stomach of the other. Alone, the little skeleton managed to defeat both enemies. After that, he looked at his master with pride, hoping to receive a compliment. But Higher Khan, maintaining his stern pose, asked why he was looking that way, saying that he couldn't be distracted during a fight. Even so, he admitted that the skeleton's movements weren't bad. At that moment, the proficiency of the bone fragment skill increased by 3 levels, and Hirkan Samin also leveled up. He recognized that his skeleton had done a great job. Later, Hirkan arrived at the player's starting village, Figus Castle. The streets were bustling with people offering guilds and looking for companions for raids and bosses. Hirkan thought that his little skeleton was learning fast. Before long, he would probably be able to clear dungeons on his own. Now, the main goal was to reach level 10 as quickly as possible. While walking through the streets of Figus, he bumped into someone and ended up being pulled back. A chubby boy asked him if he had no manners, saying that when you bump into someone, you should apologize. Hirkan just looked at him and wondered who those fifth-rate villains were, completely ignoring what they were saying. He thought he didn't have time for this kind of problem. The fat man insisted, asked him if he was listening, and came at him with a punch. However, Hirkan was protected by another player, a big guy with sunglasses and blonde hair. The blonde man told the fat man that he couldn't go around punching people in the middle of the street like that. The fat man, irritated, asked who the hell he was and if he happened to be with Hirkan. The man said not exactly, but Hirkan recognized him instantly. That super muscular physique, those flowery and weird clothes typical of the Hawaiian style, left no doubt. This was Matador Shev, the best warrior player of his past life. Hirkan was surprised and wondered what he was doing there at such an early stage of the game. Just as he was about to say something, he was interrupted by a disgusting spitting noise that came straight from the fat man. He told the old man to get out of the way if he didn't know what was going on and accused Hirkan of hitting him first, saying he'd never heard of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Shev then activated his intimidation skill, releasing an aura so strong that it was like a gale blowing over everyone in the square. The players around were dazzled by this immense presence. He said that if he was going to give it back, then the fat man should punch him in the palm, since the previous blow had hit him there. It was only fair, he thought. One of the fat man's subordinates recognized Shev at that moment and panicked. He said that this was Killer Shev, leader of the Red Bulls Guild, one of the 30 best in the game. He was known as a combat maniac, practically a killer on the battlefield. The fat man, now terrified, wondered what someone like him was doing in that place. Shev appeared smiling right behind him and asked what the answer was. The fat man was speechless, trembled with fear, and ran off while apologizing repeatedly. Shev then said that he was glad everything had been resolved peacefully, while the people around him wondered if this was really what he called peaceful. Soon afterwards, Shev asked if Hirkan was all right, and told him not to bother with those kind of people. But Hirkan simply turned away and replied that next time he didn't want any help. The atmosphere became uncomfortable. Shev himself scowled at the coldness of that answer, and commented that it hurt. In fact, Hirkan left there furious. He felt that he had been completely suppressed by Shev's power, and he hated feeling weak. He swore to himself that the next time he met him, he wouldn't be the same man. He would become someone stronger. Later, inside a dungeon that looked like an old mining cave, Hirkan was still thinking about it. The difference in strength between him and Shev was absurd, and remembering that in their past lives they were on the same level only made him more determined. He had to overcome Shev if he wanted to achieve his revenge. As he reflected, a coal tiger advanced against him, but he wasn't worried in the slightest. His little skeleton, now much better trained, acted on its own, interrupting the creature's attack and unleashing a sequence of blows, defeating the tiger with ease. The system confirmed that Hirkan had leveled up once again. The skeleton celebrated, happy with his master and proud of the results. Hirkan thought that taking 3 days to reach level 10 had taken longer than he had expected. His skeleton looked a little disappointed, but the system informed him that he had finally reached level 10. With that, he could no longer access the dungeon training area. The beginner's mark was removed and the game started processing his rewards. He received the War Clock, an essential device for any player. This clock displayed the status, missions, map, inventory, and even messages received in the world of Warlord. He thought it had been a while since he had used it, so he decided to open up his stats. Hirkan was currently level 10 with the Necromancer class. He had a title, and his attributes were 3 strength, 3 stamina, 5 intelligence, and 5 magic. He thought that was awful, but now he had 50 points to distribute. Hirkan knew that the first distribution of status was extremely important, and he had to be very careful. As a necromancer, the most obvious choice would have been to invest in intelligence and magic, but he still decided to put all the points into strength, leaving him with 53 strength points in total. Now, he believed he could crush anything that came along. The skeleton next to him saw that choice and was completely horrified. It looked very disappointed. Herokiller realized this, and in response, gave the skeleton a kick so hard that it tore its skull off, but he didn't give up on being a necromancer. He was only doing it to teach it. Increasing magic and intelligence at that point wouldn't have much impact, but investing in strength would allow him to teach it his moves as effectively as possible. He was literally betting his life on his skeleton learning. He even got emotional about it. Herokiller believed that the skeleton should worry about training, while he took care of the rest. Besides, he knew that the system wasn't the only way to increase status. Later, he went to the Monster Hunting Association in the Figus Castle branch. When he entered, they were presenting a new mission to the group, and the people started pushing each other and fighting to get the mission. They were almost killing each other for it. Herokiller found this strange, as the missions at this time of year were usually pretty bad, but the people seemed very motivated. They were probably newcomers. He went to reception and asked to see the list of available missions. The receptionist explained, yeah, he could choose any of the ones on the table, but warned him that the ones there were the ones nobody wanted, usually because they were difficult to complete or had very low rewards. He also commented that Herokiller was brave to be trying to get one of those. Herokiller knew it was true. Most of them did look awful, but he knew how to choose, and he soon found the perfect mission. It was called Bima Mountain Cave, with a reward of just 10 gold coins and consisted of hunting very low-level monsters. The receptionist even asked him if he really wanted that quest, since the reward was only 10 gold, but Herokiller thought it was perfect for him. From the outside, it really did look like a bad mission, but if he completed it before reaching level 15, he could get an ultra-rare title called Ascending Star. This title was special because it increased stats by a percentage, unlike most, which only increased by 1 or 2 fixed points. The Rising Star improved attributes based on what the character already had, meaning that the more attributes he had, the greater the bonus. This would be Herokill's first step towards becoming a completely broken character in the game. So Herokiller got ready to pick up his new equipment, and later he was on Bima Mountain ready to start, looking determined but wearing an extremely ridiculous clown outfit. Even the crows attacked him as if he were a scarecrow. He thought it looked awful because he had spent all his money on the skeleton outfit, and when he went to buy something for himself, he ended up looking like a complete weirdo. Even so, he knew there was no point regretting it. He was going to do a speed run of this mission, and with the money he got, buy some real clothes. With that thought in mind, he took off running down the mountain in his gaudy clown clothes. Meanwhile, in the middle of the woods, a person asked for help, but was pulled out and killed by player killers. Later, a new player finally arrived at Bima Mountain. It was there that the adventures of the mighty Multi would begin. He seemed to be a very talented player. He was already level 11 and said he would soon be in the world rankings. During his walk, he came across someone asking for help because his friend had fallen. Multi, full of goodwill, ran over to help. The supposed priest explained that the monster had appeared out of nowhere and attacked them, and that they were now out of potions to cure it. Multi said he had some healing potions and offered to help. The priest thanked him several times, saying that he had arrived at the right time. However, Multi was attacked from behind without realizing it and fell with just one blow. The priest thanked him again, saying that he would make good use of his items. Multi, surprised, asked if they were deceiving people. The priest replied that they couldn't be blamed for that, since it was the player himself who had fallen straight into the trap. Multi was setting up his war watch, but the other said he was a real noob. He got scared, and the priest warned his companions that it was time to look for the next idiot. This group was known as the Ralph family, an infamous gang that hunted down and killed players. Later, Herokiller, now equipped with his skeleton, faced a new type of wolf, this time with a wooden appearance. He activated the attack mode of the skeleton, which became furious and ran at such an absurd speed that, in the next second, it had already eliminated the wolves. For defeating the 3 elder wolves, Herokiller gained 375, 366, and 379 experience respectively. He thought that now, with the skeleton using a real sword, he could deal with many monsters on his own. He felt he had made the right decision in prioritizing the skeleton's equipment, since real gamers didn't care about looks. Even so, he recognized that he looked very, very ugly. The skeleton, looking at him, seemed to feel sorry for him, and Herokiller realized it. He thought it was time to move on. He needed money to get rid of that horrible, pitiful, and tragic outfit. But just then, the skeleton was hit on the head by an arrow, something even Herokiller hadn't expected. A person approached apologizing apologizing, saying that he thought it was a monster, but it was just another Ralph family disguise, pretending once again to be innocent. The priest repeated his apology, but Hirkan Neju quickly noticed the war watches and the blood-stained weapons. He understood that they were player killers, the famous PKs. Hirkan replied that everything was fine and said that he would love to receive a mana potion if that wasn't a problem. The priest replied that unfortunately they were also out of potions, but that they could help him level up, since when you level up, mana recovers automatically. Hirkan thought that if that were true, it sounded like a really good idea. The priest said that yes, it was their fault, so they wouldn't mind helping. He explained that some monsters had appeared and that the time was right, as they could just damage the enemies and leave it to Hirkan to finish them off, making it easier for him to evolve. But as they prepared, the priest asked if everyone remembered the real plan. First, they would attract all the monsters, then cast a spell to strengthen them, and finally accidentally push one of the monsters onto their chosen target. Of course, in the panic, it would quickly die. But when they put the plan into practice, Hirkan killed the wolf as if it were nothing. He looked at the Ralph family and commented that they were good, and this left the group confused. They began to wonder how that summon was so strong and thought that perhaps Hirkan's level was much higher than they had imagined. So this time, they threw several wolves at him at once. One of the gang members, who was wearing a heavy mass, rushed to attack Hirkan from behind, but he dodged easily, leaving the player completely shocked. He hadn't expected a summoner to be so fast, but Hirkan, with a single blow, cut through the mass and knocked the player to the ground, eliminating that criminal without hesitation. Hirkan then ordered his skeleton to take care of the other two. The skeleton was furious and ran with its master towards the Ralph family. The priest still tried to talk, but the two were quickly eliminated by the skeleton and Hirkan, the famous Herokiller. Hirkan thought he knew this type of person very well. People who gained the trust of others only to stab them in the back in the dirtiest and most pathetic way possible. The old Hirkan would have fallen into this kind of trap, but the Hirkan of today was different. The priest, seeing the situation, tried to ask for a moment to negotiate. He said they could take his items, but they didn't have to kill him. But Hirkan no longer believed in promises. For him, it was already too late, so he finished the job and killed them both. Ralph was defeated and, 8 war watches, which clearly didn't belong to him, were left on the ground. Hirkan commented that the guy had quite a lot and decided to keep it all for himself. He could take advantage of the situation. He also picked up some decorative clothes. Meanwhile, the skeleton was still stepping on the fallen player, or maybe he wasn't completely dead. In any case, it seemed to be making him suffer, and he still seemed quite happy about it. Hirkan wondered what was wrong with the skeleton and if it also wanted to get some items for itself. Later, Hirkan healed his skeleton using the power of necromancy, and now his companion was much better equipped. The skeleton even resembled that of another famous work that they had already shown in its entirety on the channel, the 10-hour-long one. Perhaps it had even been inspired by it. Hirkan commented that he seemed very happy with his new equipment and that, in the end, appearances didn't matter in the game. It was what was inside that really counted. But now, he was looking pretty stylish too. The skeleton looked at him with an expression of doubt, as if it didn't believe anything he said. Hirkan was pleased with the war watches. It was explained that when you sell another player's watch, the items in their inventory are transformed and drop random rewards. Then he got rare equipment with bonus statuses, such as the Black Goblin pants that gave an extra 5 points in magic and intelligence, the Sword of the Ancient Essence that gave an extra 10 points in magic, and a skill book of the Demonic Curse, as well as a large amount of gold, something that even seemed like winning the lottery. Thanks to those naive players, he got all this faster than he expected. After that, he took out a mask from his inventory. Hirkan thought that he would soon start recording his gameplay, and that was why masks of this kind were necessary, until he remembered someone saying that this kind of thing needed to be stylish. Hirkan believed that the guild needed to have an identity. It needed a face, and that was why it was called Hey-Ho Masks. He thought that people would like that identity, which is why the guild was given that name. Hirkan even thought about changing his style completely, but ended up going back to the old mask. He changed it into something darker and decided that he would never again let anyone steal what was his. He was determined to prove that he had always been right, and he was going to do it from the start. After equipping himself with his mask, he set off together with his little summoned skeleton. Later, in the mountains and peaks, they were entering the next dungeon, known as Bima Mountain Cave. Hirkan remembered that if his memory was correct, blue werewolves appeared in this dungeon. Although they were stronger monsters, with his new equipment, it should be easy. He thought he could finish it in 10 minutes and set off with great enthusiasm and determination. However, a few hours later, he was completely frustrated. because no monster had appeared. Herokiller commented that if someone had cleared the dungeon recently, the system would have sent a notification. They began to wonder if it was a bug or a glitch in the game. Meanwhile, Herokiller's skeleton was attacking a specific point on the wall. It was as if he had found something hidden. In the wall, there was a large portal, a kind of secret passage. They had discovered a secret dungeon, a new stage, and the option arose to enter it. Herokiller then understood why there were no monsters appearing in the main dungeon. It was explained that instance dungeons are unique, randomly generated areas within another dungeon, and that when they appear, the original dungeon is considered cleared. These instances are much more difficult to complete, but offer much greater rewards than ordinary dungeons. Herokiller thought that this could be a great opportunity, but the problem was that once inside the instance, he couldn't leave until he had completed everything, or died. Logically, the safest course would be to retreat. If he died there, he wouldn't be able to play for 2 whole days, which would be a huge waste of time. Even so, he decided to go in. He thought that if he didn't die, everything would be all right. As soon as he entered, he was blinded by a bright light. In fact, he was now in an open space, inside a destroyed coliseum that resembled an arena. Herokiller felt the atmosphere of the place was heavy and wondered what kind of monster would appear there. Just then, he heard heavy footsteps echoing around him. Then a blue werewolf appeared, but it didn't look normal. The system couldn't even identify the creature's level, because it was a corrupted werewolf. Herokiller hadn't expected that, and wondered why there would be a corrupted monster in that dungeon. Before he could react, he was hit hard and thrown away, crashing violently into the wall. Seeing this, his skeleton armed itself, ready for combat. But Herokiller chuckled and thought that his luck was pretty good that day, since facing a corrupted monster probably meant that he was dealing with the main material of some important mission. He commented to his skeleton that if they didn't defeat this creature, they would have to say goodbye to dinner that night. With that, he set off boldly, and the little skeleton prepared a coordinated attack, placing his sword at his master's feet to propel him into the air. Herokiller leapt with force, preparing an aerial attack. The corrupted werewolf saw this as a chance to hit his enemy from the air, but Herokiller activated his curse, imbuing his sword with the power of the demonic curse. The werewolf was definitely not expecting this, because with just one blow, his arm was completely torn off, as if it had been cut by a hot blade passing through butter. The creature screamed in pain, and soon afterwards, the demonic curse was activated on his body, causing all his statuses to be reduced by 10%. Herokiller recognized that this ability was really useful, but the werewolf recovered too quickly, became even more enraged, and even looked bigger. To make matters worse, the arm that had been cut off regenerated as if nothing had happened. This only served to make him even more dangerous. In short, the system announced that the corrupted werewolf had entered a state of brutal rage, becoming completely insane and nullifying all the negative effects applied to him. Herokiller had expected this boss to be difficult to deal with, and even though he wanted to save his resources for later, he saw this as a chance to test something important. He then activated the special slot on his war watch, releasing the sealed power, and a dark cloak enveloped his entire body. When the mist dissipated, Herokiller was in a completely different outfit, wearing armor made of darkness. It was explained that inventory activation was one of the unique features of the Warlord game, and that when a player used it, it was as if they were channeling the pure energy of the game world to increase their stats and reshape their body, activating a second unpredictable form, something players called frenzy mode. Herokiller called the werewolf to fight and was clearly ready for combat. The creature's claws almost hit him, and if they had, they would have done a lot of damage. But since they didn't, Herokiller managed to dodge all the next attacks. Even so, he found no opening, no clear chance to counterattack. The werewolf left him no room to breathe. Herokiller realized that he was facing an incredibly fast, strong, and dangerous boss, and any attack could bring him down. When the werewolf lunged forward, Herokiller remembered that he still had a card up his sleeve. The power of frenzy mode multiplied his attributes several times over. So without hesitation, he executed a powerful slash that pierced the werewolf from the chest to the back. He thought that this would finally make the fight fun, but perhaps he had gotten too carried away because he was almost grabbed by the creature. He narrowly managed to escape and remembered that the enemy was still in a state of maximum fury. The next second, the werewolf appeared behind him, ready to catch him. But Herokiller knew he was forgetting something important. The little skeleton was still there, and with a sharp attack, he cut off the creature's arm again. Herokiller then gave the signal for them to use the combination move they had practiced earlier, and the skeleton nodded in agreement. The werewolf was completely confused by the situation, and at that moment received the joint attack of the two, being cut into several pieces. The system announced that the corrupted werewolf had been eliminated, and that frenzy mode had been deactivated. Herokiller thought that for the first time in a long time, that really wasn't so bad. When he left the dungeon and completed the mission that was recorded on the card, he received his reward of 10 gold coins, which turned into a golden card, and because because his skeleton warrior was responsible for defeating a high-level creature, the bone fragment evolved from rank F to rank E. In addition, Hirkan received another 20,000 gold and collected the werewolf's skin and bones as part of the reward. The little skeleton was so happy celebrating his victory that he even seemed to be dancing, while Hirkan was thinking that instant's dungeons really were very good. In addition to the normal rewards, he had obtained a rare item called the Corruption Tracker Necklace, which increased any status related to his class, offering an extra 18 points in all attributes. It was an exclusive item that could not be exchanged with any other player, and in order to use it, you had to have the title of Corruption Tracker. Hirkan wondered if it was a unique item. Even without being able to sell it, it was clearly far superior to any common item. It was then that he realized what it really meant to be a corruption tracker. He had acquired 3 new titles. The first was Rising Star, which increased his intelligence and magic by 3%. The second was Challenger of Heroes, which granted 3 points of stamina, but which seemed to be a much more modest bonus. And finally, the title Corruption Tracker, which still had no description in the system, but Hirkan already had an idea of what it was. It was the introductory title for the first chapter of the Warlord game's main story mission, a narrative line considered to be the backbone of the game's universe, and which determined the course of important events within that world. That's why the rewards for this mission were absurdly good. Every player dreamed of taking part in this quest line, no matter how hard they had to work. It was the most important and desired content in Warlord. Hirkan thought that, in his past life, he had barely made it to Chapter 4 of this mission, and now, there he was, entering from the start with a huge advantage. It was as if he had won the lottery 5 times in a row. Excited by his unexpected progress, he decided to log out of the game to celebrate. Later at home, he was watching the announcement video of the Hydra Guild, which had just reached the final stage of the corruption scene. They promised to clean it all up in just 3 months. Watching the video, Jaehyun was disgusted, muttering that it wasn't luck at all, but pure manipulation. The Hydra Guild was already in its final phase, and he believed that there was nothing more that could be achieved there. He was so close, but now he thought he might have to skip this part and jump straight to the next chapter. But then he had an idea. Perhaps this was the perfect opportunity. The entire world of Warlord was focused on the corruption phase, and this was the first major mission to be completed on the entire server. If he uploaded a video showing the secret dungeon and the battle against the corrupted werewolf, that content could become a super viral video. He could already imagine the dollars pouring into his account, one after the other. It was a good thing he had recorded it all. Now he just needed to edit it quickly, make a few cuts and publish it. But for that, he thought of a specific person, someone with the talent to turn that material into something legendary. The legendary editor from his past life, who at that moment was nonchalantly eating noodles. It was the filmmaker Romeni. When Romeni received the request, she was a little surprised. She hadn't expected someone of a high level to send something directly to her. When she saw the name Hai Irkan and read that it was a level 15 dungeon, she thought that it was probably the beginner's cave, imagining that it was just another noob trying to make a viral video. But as soon as she opened the content of the video and understood what it was about, she was so shocked that she even knocked over the chair she was sitting on. Romeni immediately realized that this player would be the perfect model for her videos. Later in the evening, while this was going on, a very wealthy woman had summoned one of her subordinates to an urgent meeting. She commented that a new video about the corruption phase had just been posted, and said it was interesting because it showed a level 15 player defeating a corrupted werewolf single-handedly. The subordinate informed her that her team had already reviewed the video and believed that the werewolf was probably low level. But the woman ignored this analysis and said that she really liked the player and wanted to hire him immediately. In real life, that woman was Chae Seol-yeon, the CEO of Lightning Enterprises, the world's #1 business conglomerate. In-game, she was known as the Queen of Thunder, Sirma, one of the most influential figures on the entire server. Meanwhile, Hirkan was completely shocked. Gamis, looking at the numbers for his video, it had only been a few hours since he posted it, and it had already exceeded 6,000 views. He thought that things were really working out. In his previous life, it had taken him months to achieve this kind of reach. He soon noticed another difference from what he remembered. Romeni, as well as having done the impeccable editing of the video, was also starting to contact him more often. Hirkan used to think that Romeni was someone unreachable, but apparently in this new life, she was getting closer and closer. She asked if he had seen the number of views, and he confirmed that he had. Romeni replied that it was her job, but she didn't stop praising him, saying that the material he had scent was premium and even sent him a flower picture as a joke. Herokiller thought for a second about blocking her, but knew she would be very useful. Romani then asked when the next video would be, and Herokiller replied that that was an excellent question, since he himself had no idea what he would record next. It was practically impossible that another corrupted boss would appear out of nowhere in his path just because. Even so, he clicked on the button to log back into the game and thought that, for the time being at least, everything was going as expected. So he logged back into Warlord. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the game, head matador Shev was watching Herokin's video. He admitted that the boy's moves were excellent, but there was something strange, something familiar. He began to wonder if he had ever met that player before. Just then, someone appeared and asked who he was talking about. It was Yell, also from the Red Bulls Guild. Shev replied that he was talking about that player everyone had been talking about lately, Herokin the Ha-Ho Mask. Yell insisted on knowing why he was so focused on that video, saying that lately the boss only watched this guy's recordings, as if he were obsessed. Even so, Shev said that the new players emerging made him increasingly cautious, but that particular player was really exceptional. He commented that Herokin used a summoned skeleton and that he was on a completely different level from any other necromancer. He also said that the boy fought with great skill and wondered if he would accept a duel. Yell interrupted by saying that that was enough and that if he had time to spend on such things, he should hurry up with the tasks he needed to do because he was going live in 5 minutes. The boss asked if it was time and she said yes, reminding him that he owed her. Yell then said that if he was really that grateful, he just needed to make sure that the live broadcast that night was a good one, because 200,000 people had bought tickets just to watch Matador Shev, the leader of the Red Bulls, and currently ranked 9th in the world. Meanwhile, the dungeon portal was forming right in front of him, and he had already activated his frenzy form, ready to end it all brutally. He called all his units together and ordered them to prepare for combat. Later, at the Monster Hunting Association, in the branch located in Figus Castle, Herokin complained that there were no interesting quests. There wasn't a single quest that was any good, and he blamed that damn startup village for it. He even thought about giving up the idea of creating videos for a while. But then the counter-attendant turned to him and asked, with a curious look, if he was the guy who had cleared Bima Mountain. Herokiller realized that it was the same guy as before. He introduced himself as Hotan and asked if Herokiller had some time to talk. So later, in a slightly more private office, Hotan told him that he had heard that he had seen a corrupted monster in the cave of Bima Mountain. And Herokiller wondered if there had really been an event like that in the game, until he remembered and confirmed that, yes, he had seen a werewolf with strange eyes. Hotan said that he already suspected this, and explained that what Herokiller found was a creature exposed to the power of the corrupted. He said that no one knows exactly who the corrupted is, but the power of this entity transforms and modifies monsters, making them more brutal and evil. The damage caused by it in this world is enormous, which is why the Monster Hunting Association has placed a very high reward. Herokiller then excitedly grabbed his arm and said that he would be happy to risk his life to bring down this evil being. He thought at the time that this was a hidden mission, and he became even more excited when Hotan explained that the boy would be facing a very powerful and corrupted being. Even so, Herokiller replied that it was fine. He was willing to face anything. Hotan said he wasn't ready for that, but Herokiller thanked him for the opportunity. As he insisted, Hotan said he would give it a chance and explained that there is a man called Ahimri in Bun's Castle, which is to the east of Figus Castle, and that this man could teach Herokiller a thing or two. He would also write a letter of recommendation. Herokiller was very shocked, but he accepted the secret mission called Ahimbri's Teachings, where he would have to find Ahimri and deliver the letter written by Hotan, and as a reward, he would win a skill book. He began to shake with excitement and shouted with happiness, thinking that now the game was really beginning. In his mind, it seemed to be a mission to become a disciple of Ahimri, who was one of the 7 disciples of the great mage Bokhan, and the NPC Ahimri possessed the rarest skill books in the game, books that any mage and warlord would kill to get, and almost no one had that chance in their past life. Herokiller thought that perhaps he had gotten it because of his Rising Star title, and also because of the main mission involving the corrupted. Excited, he prepared to run like there was no tomorrow. But he almost forgot one important thing. There was something he needed to sort out before he set off. So later, he went to a forest where the leaves were falling, and in a clearing, he used the bone fragment, throwing that little skull on the ground and summoning his little skeleton. Herokiller realized that he still hadn't properly analyzed the items he had picked up the day before, and now he could finally use the werewolf skull. The system then asked him if he would like to transform the werewolf skull into a skeleton warrior. Herokiller confirmed that, yes, absolutely he wanted to use the werewolf skull so the creature's traces entered his little skeleton, increasing its durability by 2 points. In addition, Herokiller also had a corruption tracker necklace, which he equipped immediately, and this necklace increased all his statuses by 18 points and also improved his class abilities. Now that this preparation was done, he felt more powerful. He then used 2 more bone fragments, summoning 2 small skulls that turned into 2 more skeletal companions. The first skeleton was very confused by this, as he now had brothers, and Herokiller warned him that from now on all fights would be in groups of 3 and that they needed to become friends. The little skeleton seemed desperate at this idea, but Herokiller wasn't worried at all, and was already thinking about what kind of monster would be born in that area. Later, everyone was facing a level 25 forest bear. A single blow from him was enough to destroy a tree with great ease. It seemed to be made of grass-covered earth, so tough was it. Herokiller managed to dodge the first claw, and although he looked frightened by the second blow, he was actually just drawing the monster's attention so that his soldiers could take action. The first skeleton ran up with his sword, but had his head grabbed and was thrown away like a piece of garbage. Herokiller was indignant, wondering if he had really fallen for such an obvious blow, and complained that they always had to attack from the enemy's blind spot. The second skeleton also went for the attack, with a little more courage and hope, but was also slapped away without doing any damage. Herokiller became increasingly irritated by the situation, reinforcing that he was supposed to attack from the blind spot. Meanwhile, the bear was just watching everything calmly without attacking Herokiller, as if waiting for the next mistake. Herokiller became even more frustrated, realizing that even after seeing the other being crushed, the second skeleton acted in exactly the same way. He thought that this kind of training was getting him nowhere. Then came the last hope. The strongest skeleton, the armored one, sprang into action, and Herokiller was impressed by his courage. He lunged forward with his blade ready, but when he got close, he was slapped so hard that his skull was blown off. Herokiller concluded that no, he wasn't the last hope either, and that they were all idiots. Later, the 3 skeletons were gathered together being scolded. They were visibly nervous, and Herokiller asked them if they had brains, even though he knew they obviously didn't, but he still questioned it. He explained that when a monster is attacked, it turns against the attacker, so there will always be a blind spot available, which means they only need to attack from the blind spot. Even so, the little skeletons were confused and didn't quite understand. Herokiller wondered why he was still wasting time explaining these things. He even thought things were going well, as his ability had risen in rank, and thanks to the effect of the necklace, he could now summon 3 skeletons. However, it was no use, as the 3 of them were still weak and lacked any team coordination. Even if the first one had learned something on his own, the 3 of them didn't seem to work together at all. He realized that he was spending triple his mana and getting even worse results. Herokiller was so frustrated that he thought about dropping everything. But at least he recognized that he had reached level 20 and that, for the time being, his next videos wouldn't be focused on combat. Finally, he told everyone to get up, because today had been enough training, and now they were ready to head towards Bangsu Castle, where they would arrive shortly. And Herokiller thought that now that he had become a necromancer, his summons would do all the work for him, so he could just sit back and relax while the undead took care of everything. But he soon realized that things seemed even worse than before, as if fate was always against him. So he continued walking through the forest until he reached the Monster Hunting Association in the Bangsu Castle branch. And even though it wasn't the original village, the place was pretty full, with players and NPCs everywhere, all very busy. Suddenly, the players began to get agitated because they couldn't find a specific person. They were commenting loudly and searching desperately, wanting to know which mission this person had taken, asking each other where he was and shouting for someone to capture him. And Herokiller observed this with contempt, thinking that these people looked like a pack of hyenas. There were always these types everywhere, who instead of focusing on their own missions and progress, preferred to follow what others were doing, as if they were parasites trying to suck up other people's efforts. It was then that a bald man approached and asked if he had any good missions that they could do as a group. But Herokiller rudely told him to go away, as he knew he couldn't let anyone find out that he was on Ahimri's secret mission. So he went upstairs and handed his letter of recommendation to the NPC at the entrance. As the letter was from Hotan, he was allowed to enter immediately, which caused quite a commotion among the other players, who were outraged at not being able to do the same. Many also wanting to pass through that barrier. But Herokiller was already excited about about what Ahimri could teach him, as it was a secret mission and should contain some very valuable reward. Besides, it seemed that his connections were finally paying off. When he entered the room, he was quite surprised, as the place was a real mess with piles of books thrown all over the place, as if it were an abandoned warehouse. And soon he heard a voice asking who was there, because there were no appointments scheduled for today. It was Ahimri himself, who looked completely exhausted, with deep circles under his eyes, books piled on his feet, head, and arms, which made Hyrcan wonder if he had always been like that. He then introduced himself as Herokiller, saying that he had been sent there by Lord Hotan, and Ahimri commented that he was a black magician in training, and that he seemed to have good potential. And Herokiller, even though he didn't care, thanked Hotan for the recognition, but made it clear that he was only interested in his reward. The Ahimri then handed over two very rare books as payment, one teaching the skill of bone armor and the other the skill of the helmet of madness. And Herokiller was completely surprised, as they were incredibly rare and valuable items. Yet he thanked him very much for the reward, and the Ahimri only replied that with that his negotiation was concluded, wishing him a good journey before ending the mission. But Herokiller wasn't satisfied, as he had hoped there would be more content linked to that mission. So even though the mission was officially over, he tried to insist, calling the master and asking for another chance, as he wanted to learn even more skills and was willing to do anything for it. Then Ahimri grabbed his hands and asked if it was true that he would do anything, and he seemed to like this promise very much, because soon afterwards he handed Herokiller a new mission called Find the Egg in the Nest. Only this mission had no visible reward, and Herokiller wondered if he had just been tricked. Meanwhile, in the city, a knight in impressive armor drew everyone's attention because of the magnificent equipment he wore, and then he started walking towards a large tower in the center of the city, saying that this was the right place, the place where the Ho-Ho mask lived. Herokiller, on the other hand, was still confused and angry, thinking that he had really been tricked by an NPC because he thought he would get a reward for the mission, but all he got was another mission with no reward at all, wondering if it was really worth continuing with it. The moment he commented on the mission, a group of players around him noticed and immediately threw themselves at him, saying that he had received a mission trying to get any information out of him. And Herokiller remembered that he had forgotten how annoying and invasive these players could be, so he wondered if it wouldn't be easier just to eliminate them all right there. But before he could react, someone appeared and took everyone off him and saved him. This mysterious knight asked for a moment to talk to Herokiller in a quieter place, and Herokiller became suspicious, wondering who this guy was. But when the man called him Hey-Ho Mask, he decided to go along. Later, in a quiet alley, the knight apologized for the commotion and explained that he just wanted to talk to Herokiller, but with so many people around, it would be impossible. Herokiller noticed that from the level of the equipment, he must have been of high rank, but he still couldn't remember anyone like that from his past life, so he began to wonder if that guy knew him. The knight, who was wearing glasses, asked if he was the Hey-Ho, and Herokiller thought the best strategy at that moment was to pretend he didn't know anything, so he answered as if he had never heard of the name. The knight then asked if he had received a mission from an NPC called Ahimri, and Herokiller became even more suspicious, wondering if he should share any information just because this guy seemed to know too much, and concluded that if the guy wanted to fight, it was better to put his own account at risk, because he wasn't going to give in easily. So Herokiller gave the knight the middle finger, and decided that this was the best strategy, to continue denying everything, and pretending that he was just an unimportant idiot, just to see what he would do next. What the knight did was reach out and apologize, but Herokiller just called him a coward, and said he'd let it pass this time, even though he wondered who this guy thought he was, since he clearly wasn't alone, and it all seemed part of a plan. The knight then commented that Herokiller was definitely not a professional, and while wiping his hand in disgust, said that if he was really experienced, he wouldn't have left his left hand, where he wore a war watch, so unprotected. In the shadows, someone else was watching everything, wondering if he should still keep an eye on Ahimri, since the corruption mission was almost complete, and if anyone noticed now, there would be no hiding it. The knight answered no, because the real main mission was precisely that of the egg in the nest, and said it was better to reduce the number of variables. The person in the shadows then returned to his position, and the knight also left. Meanwhile, Herokiller was watching everything from the window, wondering who that other person involved was, and concluded that since they were moving around together, they were probably part of an organization. But if they were from an ordinary guild, they would never have revealed their identities like that, trying to make some kind of deal with him. He also realized that the way the knight used his left hand with the war watch indicated that they were definitely not novices, and so he wondered once again who the hell those guys were. Later, while training his skeletons, Herokiller was sure that there was something special about that egg in the nest mission, and concluded that they had probably seen the video he posted, because the name of his channel was Ha-Ho, and that's why they came after him. But even so, considering that they had let him go, it seemed that their target wasn't exactly him, or at least not yet. And yes, it was about the mission he had received. Herkin thought that he had no idea what was going on, but if he continued with that mission, he would surely run into those guys again. In order not to be traced, he would have to stop posting videos for the time being. He wondered why there were always psychopaths getting involved in his life. Meanwhile, Chie, or rather Storm Queen Sure, was awakening from her capsule. Her secretary Park Suji appeared, saying that she had done a great job. Suji offered her a glass of water while asking how the test for new members had gone. Chie replied that it was complete garbage. She wondered why no one was remotely useful to her and wanted to know if there had been any news of Raho recently. Suji commented that he still hadn't heard back from the guy who posted the video and that perhaps he had even joined another guild. Chie asked if it really was another guild, and Suji replied that he would check again. Chie asked for the information to be delivered as soon as possible, and also asked about the director. Suji said that there was no word from him either. Chie commented that the Warlord was getting powerful, and that was why he was quiet. She recalled that when he first said he wanted to play these games, he tried to call off the wedding. Suji was impressed by Chie's big body. Before leaving the room, Chie told her to make a new selection of candidates and to submit the report by the next day. Suji asked in surprise if it was until tomorrow, but Chie just slammed the door in her face. Suji wondered about her boss's difficult temperament. Meanwhile, Hirkin was in a place he hadn't visited for some time, the Lizard Swamp. He thought that, as Ahimri was staying at Ban's castle, the mission area would surely be near there. Based on the word egg, he considered that the mission could be related to oviparous monsters, such as those of the bird, reptile, or insect type, and the place that matched all this was precisely the Lizard Swamp. He decided to look there first. If he didn't find anything, he would go elsewhere. Hirkin summoned his little skeleton to test something. As this was a high-level hunting ground, he thought he should put an enchantment on the summon. He used the skill Elmo of Madness, which marked the skeleton's head with a symbol. This symbol activated the spell, and there was a random chance that the creature would lose its sanity. When he activated the helmet, the little skeleton became extremely tuned, gained horns and a red energy, looking much stronger and more insane. Herkan told himself that the test would start now, but he didn't pay attention to the part that said the skeleton could completely lose control. The test consisted of attacking the master himself, so the little skeleton lunged at Hirkin as if to kill him, but he hit back with a punch so hard that it took the summoner's head off. He became angry, wondering how that summon dared to attack him, and if it was some kind of bug or if he had been tricked once again. Suddenly, a level 30 lizard man appeared behind him. Hirkin thought that the guinea pigs had arrived at the right time. He activated the Helmet of Madness on all his summons. All the skeletons had their attributes increased and received armor made of bones. Now they were ready to face the lizard men. They advanced totally insane, and the monsters were no match for them. The lizard men were broken in half with ease, and at that moment, Hirkin received 864 experience. Herkan thought those incantations were great and decided that next week they would keep doing it again and again until they found that damned egg. He thought that if he wasn't in that region, they would move on to the next one without hesitation. But before he knew it, someone was watching him with great interest. That person was Ilya, a woman known for her stunning beauty. She knew this and had no problem admitting it because it was the truth. Everyone around her adored her. Many even offered her gifts just for her looks. Because of this, her life had always been easy, because whenever she faced a problem, her slaves solved everything for her. But at that moment, Ilya slipped and fell face first into a puddle full of goo and dirt. She thought angrily that she hated that place. She remembered that one of her slaves had brought her there once, promising to help her level up, but he had died on the way, and now she was alone and stuck in that horrible swamp. Ilya realized that the monsters in the area were incredibly strong, but when she saw Hirkan, she decided that he would be her new slave, her new target. She threw herself on the ground, pretending to be injured, and called for help, saying that she had been attacked by the monsters in the area. She believed that Hirkan would easily fall into her trap because no one could ever resist her charm, and it wasn't possible for someone to leave a beauty like her in such a state. But Hirkan simply turned his back on her without saying anything. Ilya was completely shocked, couldn't believe what had happened, and wondered if he was really ignoring her beauty. Hirkan, on the other hand, looked at her and thought she was just another crazy person trying to fool him. Ilya was so angry angry that she bit her lip until it bled, furious at the contempt she had received. She wondered how he dared to treat her like that, but Hirkan remained calm as his skeletons finished off the lizard men around him. He found that woman incredibly annoying, and yet she kept following him, insisting on getting his attention. She kept pretending to be innocent, trying to waste his time, but Hirkan realized that there were no decent players in that damn game and decided that the best way to get rid of her was to sort it out straight away. He asked if she had lost anything, and Ilya said yes, that she had lost her sword during the fight in the swamp, and asked if he could help her get it back. Hirkan then asked if, when she got her sword back, she would leave for good, and Ilya said yes, thanking him enthusiastically as she thought that she had finally managed to fool him. Later, she took him to the place where the sword was. The object was lost on a small island in the middle of the swamp water. Hirkan reminded her of her promise to leave as soon as she recovered the sword, and sent his skeletons to get the item because he wasn't an idiot to risk it alone. As she thanked him, Ilya thought that necromancers were nothing without their summons. At that moment, she saw that he was on his back and thought it was the perfect chance to kill him. But when she tried to attack him, Hirkan turned around with a psycho look on his face and said she was too slow. He grabbed her by the cloak and threw her hard in the opposite direction, causing her to fall face first into the swamp water. Ilya, outraged, shouted at him, asking if he thought he was going to get rid of her so easily after that, and threatened that his bodyguards would come after him. But Hirkan asked her to look back, and when she turned, she was faced with the lizard men who began to devour her mercilessly. Hirkan then thought that next time, if she really wanted to fool him, she would have to do a better job, because he had already realized her intentions from the start, and thought she was a complete fool. Hirkan thought he was tired of being tricked by people. He thought he had wasted too much time on it. Meanwhile, his little skeleton was distracted practicing his charm, and soon the three of them ended up getting beaten up, so Hirkan said they should learn from him and not from those weirdos. The player Ilya ended up dying, and Hirkan received a lot of points for it. He wasn't expecting so much XP and was surprised, so he started to think about what she had said before. Those bodyguards of hers seemed like a lie. He bet that a person like her didn't even have real bodyguards, but at that moment, he was already being watched by some nerds. Later, still in the swamp, Hirkan was confronting one of the nerds, and the fat man in the group said that that damn enemy of Ilya's was going to pay for what he had done. But Hirkan wondered why they were going to such lengths for her. It wasn't as if she was paying them for it, so he began to think that it was ridiculous for someone to do all that just to avenge a woman they had met in a game. The fat man then replied that he was doing it all because he loved her, after which he was cut in half and killed. Hirkan thought they were all a joke. He thought that crazy girl from before had tried to trick him and hadn't succeeded. He'd got rid of her, but now she wanted revenge, and it seemed she really did have bodyguards, because when she asked for help, it seemed to have worked. Now all the nerds were after him, calling him Ilya's enemy, and Hirkan thought it was all insane, because every day he met a different crazy person in that game. He was also anxious about that damned mission where he needed to find an egg, but so far he hadn't found anything, and now he still had to deal with those assholes. Hirkan thought he needed to finish off that woman once and for all, because if he left that place unprepared, he could get into even more trouble. So he took another war watch and got 5,000 gold, as well as a few items, including the Necklace of Promise, a super rare item that could be sold for 800,000. Hirkan thanked that dead nerd for the reward. He thought that if they kept coming, he would kill them one by one, because that was easy money. When another nerd showed up, Hirkan confessed that it was he himself who had killed that Ilya, and warned that anyone who tried to do anything would end up dead too. But when he realized that there were several coming at once, he ran away from that army of nerds. Hirkan didn't understand why there were so many of them there. He thought that obsessive woman was taking it too seriously, so he threw his skeletons into the fray. But the nerds weren't scared. They used the power of love, and unbelievably, it really worked. They defeated the skeletons with ease, and Hirkan began to realize that these guys were on a higher level than him. He understood that a fight against everyone at once was impossible to win at that point, so he decided that he would kill them all as soon as he leveled up. Later, he was in a much darker part of the swamp, and he thought that those nerds were really persistent, so he needed to keep moving so as not to get caught, until he realized that he no longer recognized the place where he was. That environment seemed very different from all the rest of the lizard swamp, and he had already explored that swamp many times. Hirkan began to think that this must be related to his mission. Perhaps this was the right place. Meanwhile, even the nerds were passing passing by looking for Hirkan. And when they saw his skeletons, they realized that they were dancing, so the nerds wondered what was going on, calling it a skeleton ball. The chubby nerd was furious at the Necromancer's provocation. He took it as an insult to Ilya and stormed off in a rage, only to be caught by a large creature that he didn't notice approaching. He had entered the boss area of that place, and everyone was terrified when they saw the huge creature, the level 40 lizard dragon. Hirkan, of course, was hiding and realized at that moment that the place he was in was the lizard dragon's nest. This was a boss with an extremely high defense fence, a lot of life, and a powerful attack, requiring at least 20 level 40 players to defeat it. From what he remembered of his past life, the lizard dragon raid had already been completed a while ago, so normally this boss shouldn't have been there at the time. However, as his related mission was in that place along with that egg, the monster ended up reappearing because of Hirkan's mission, meaning that if the lizard dragon was still there, that was exactly where it needed to be to complete the mission given by Ahimri. It was then that Hirkan realized something important. Ahimri had sent him to that place alone, to face a level 40 creature, a real raid boss, and Hirkan thought that that wretched wizard was a scammer. But he was relieved to still have companions nearby, the nerds, who could serve as a distraction in the fight against the dragon. The nerds said they could just run away, but Hirkan didn't intend to let them escape so easily, so he used enchantments on his skeletons to surround them all, completely blocking the way out. The nerds complained, saying they could force their way through, but the one who tried to do so was thrown into the sky by the dragon with a single blow. The other nerds realized too late that Hirkan was already running, and he mentally thanked them for their sacrifices, promising never to forget them, since now the way was clear for him to enter the dragon's empty nest. As soon as he entered, he started looking for the egg, but the place where it was supposed to be was completely empty. Hirkan insisted on searching, as he believed it had to be somewhere, until he finally found something that looked like a very strange egg. In fact, it was more like an egg-shaped stone, but it still vaguely resembled a real egg, so he decided to take it with him. Soon afterwards, he realized that all his skeletons had been destroyed, which indicated that the dragon was now detecting the last living invader on the site, namely him. The dragon appeared, destroying everything around it, and Hirkan realized that he was completely screwed. He knew he couldn't stay in the nest for long, so he decided to take the object that looked like the egg, hoping that it really was the item for the mission, and if it was something valuable, hoping even more that it was the double mission. Later, in the swamp, the Legion of Nerds was completely defeated, and the only one still alive saw Hirkan approaching. Hirkan commented that Warlord was a very interesting game, as it gave freedom even to idiots like them. When the last nerd tried to reply, Hirkan almost stuck his sword in his face, explaining that he wasn't joking when he played Warlord, because there was a lot at stake, and that next time, he wouldn't take it too easy. He said this to both that nerd and that damned woman, and walked out of there, stepping on the bodies scattered on the ground. As he walked, Hirkan thought that if they came after him again, it would turn into a real war. Now he wanted to make some money, so he decided to sell the exact location of the lizard dragon for 100,000 gold. Later, he went to deliver the egg directly to Ahimri, claiming that he had brought the item he had asked for. Hirkan thought it had to be the right thing to do, as he didn't want to go back to that swamp ever again. Calmly, Ahimri confirmed that this was exactly the item he was looking for, and praised Hirkan's work, saying that he had been much quicker than he had expected, especially for someone like him. Hirkan wondered if he was going to be humiliated by that NPC every time he completed a mission, so he asked what the next one would be. Ahimri explained that whenever they investigated the areas where the monsters were mutating, that kind of object was always found, and that, for the time being, he had named it the Stone of Corruption. At that moment, Hirkan understood why those two people were after him. The Stone of Corruption was an extremely important item for the game's main mission, and it was clear that those players just wanted to make sure they got their hands on that egg, because it directly impacted the progress of Warlord's main mission. Hirkan thought he was being completely fooled by that mission. He had never imagined that he was getting directly involved with the main mission of the entire game. While he was trying to understand the situation, Ahimri apologized to him, saying that this mission was perhaps too big for someone of his level, as they were dealing with an overwhelming, and still unknown power, and he needed Hirkan to prove his worth. Ahimri asked him what he thought about it, and if he was ready to face corruption. Hirkan thought that he had plenty of willpower, and that taking part in the main mission was a golden opportunity. He said he would fight with body and soul, but Ahimri interrupted him, explaining that it wasn't the time yet, as the monsters were too strong, and he didn't think a newcomer like Hirkan would be able to defeat them. Hirkan began to wonder if his level was really too low to continue the mission. Then Ahimri said he could help, but on one condition. If Hirkan said the words, "Please, great wizard Ahimri, make me your disciple," then he would take him on as an apprentice and teach him. Later, Hirkan left Ahimri's house extremely angry. After accepting accepting that bastard's mission. He complained to himself that the wizard was a wretched pervert and that he hated him deeply, even more for making him repeat that shameful phrase 3 times in a row. Meanwhile, in the lizard swamp, the raid finally defeated the lizard dragon, bringing the confrontation to a complete end. This was only possible because Herokiller himself had sold the exact location of the dragon, and the group celebrated their victory. The person who had helped the most during the preparation of the raid was the bespectacled knight, the same one who had been behind Herokiller earlier. He thanked everyone for their support, and of course the players wanted to share a good part of the reward with him. They said that if it hadn't been for him, they would never have made it. But the knight, known as Heaper, refused any kind of compensation, saying he hated breaking the rules. The other players were confused, wondering if he really didn't want the money, and some even wondered if he was doing it all just to help people. As he walked past them, Heaper said that all the items inside the nest belonged to the group, but inside he was thinking how lucky he was to have this chance. He never imagined that he would have the opportunity to get his hands on the Stone of Corruption. As soon as he heard that the lizard dragon had reappeared, he was afraid that the Heiho Mask Guild was also involved. But when he learned that the dragon was still alive, he saw a real chance. So he ran straight to the nest to get the Stone of Corruption. But when he got there, the place was completely empty. The stone was no longer there. He was so frustrated that he shouted out loud, overcome with rage. Later, Jae-hyun commented to Yao-Eyes that he could finally fulfill his wish. After going through so much pain and hardship, he now had enough money to do what he wanted most. He said that, with all that money, he would finally be able to buy meat, and that after so long, he would finally be able to eat properly again. Jae-hyun commented that he had made a lot of extra money by killing those nerds, so he converted it all to real money, thinking that he was now set for life. But as soon as he made the deposit, it was like being stabbed in the chest. The credit card took some of it, the household bills took some, and the rent took what was left. In the end, there wasn't even enough money left to order ordinary food, let alone meat. Jae-hyun wondered why he was so broken like that, given that he had worked so hard, fought so hard, and still seemed to be in the same place. Then he received a message from Romeni asking if he was still alive. She said she wanted to make more videos with him. Jae-hyun realized that he had completely forgotten about her with everything that was going on. Maybe he really couldn't make videos with those assholes chasing him, but Jae-hyun didn't think he should worry so much that he starved either. At the end of the day, he was just an innocent gamer trying to survive in the midst of chaos. Jae-hyun thought he couldn't stand it any longer, so he decided to do everything his own way. Later, he appeared inside a dungeon known as the Graveyard in the Forest of the Dead, ready to record his next adventure. Herokiller stood before one of the scariest places he had ever visited. Still, it was the best spot to farm experience at his current level. The dark atmosphere, as tense as it was, also made for perfect footage to draw views on the videos he posted. Even with the heavy mood, Herokiller knew this was the right moment to start the hunt. Before beginning the farm, he gathered his companions, the summoned skeletons. However, there was now a new member in the group. Thanks to a spell he had unexpectedly received from that damned Ahimri, Herokiller was able to summon a skeleton mage. This spell allowed him to call forth a skeleton capable of using magic, bringing much more versatility to the group by combining physical and magical attacks. The power of the skeleton mage depended directly on Herokill's proficiency in controlling the summon, and as he improved, the mage would grow stronger. It was a rare and powerful spell, but it also consumed a lot of mana, making its use limited. That day, the plan was to hunt level 33 skeletons, stronger enemies than they were used to. The little skeletons were clearly afraid, but Herokiller encouraged them, or rather, pressured them. He said there was no time for hesitation, as there was much to be done. He ordered them to attack immediately. Since none of them wanted to move, he ended up forcing them into action. In the first clash, Herokill's skeleton knight struck the enemy and knocked off half its skull. Yet the enemy skeleton still moved, leaving the little knight terrified. Herokiller explained that normal attacks weren't enough against this type of foe. He grabbed his magic hammer, a rare weapon that granted +3 strength, and smashed the enemy skeleton's skull so hard that it was sent flying. Still seeing fear in his skeleton's eyes, Herokiller asked what was wrong with them. The mission's objective was clear: defeat 100 skeletons in 100 minutes. A tough goal, but possible. He threatened to abandon them if they failed to keep up. Immediately, the little skeletons began to obey. Though visibly saddened to fight against their own kind, they quickly adapted to the mission. One by one, they took down enemies with precision, and the pace of battle grew sharper with every passing moment. Herokiller was surprised at his squad's performance. He thought it would take them longer to adjust to the new enemies, but they were doing well. Excited, he considered contacting Roman already to prepare the video, knowing he'd have plenty of good content to post. It was then that the ground shook. A much larger creature appeared, and the sound of its steps alone rattled the battlefield. It was a level 35 skeleton warrior. Herokiller immediately recognized it as a rare elite monster that spawned randomly at low probability. This meant he had a unique chance to gain even more experience, and of course more views. While studying the enemy, Herokiller joked to himself, wondering which part he would eat first, as if it were a meal. Ribs, a steak, everything looked appetizing. But the joke didn't last long. The first strike from the skeleton warrior destroyed everything around it. Both Herokiller and his skeletons had to dodge quickly. A hit like that would have caused serious problems. Even so, he managed to react in time and broke the enemy's arm. His little knight also acted bravely, opening an opportunity for Herokiller to smash his hammer directly into the warrior's knee. The plates protecting the monster's leg shattered. After the blow, he checked if everyone was okay. The skeletons replied with an ironic, "Yes, Captain Impotent," but at least they were still alive. Herokiller thought the fight would be harder, but things seemed under control, or so he believed. The skeleton warrior was still standing and charged at Ran, one of his skeletons. Herokiller had expected this, knowing that impatient enemies always left an opening. As planned, the finishing blow came from the new ally, the skeleton mage. With a massive fireball, it incinerated the warrior once and for all. The victory was decisive. Herokiller gained a good amount of experience and knew that clip alone would earn him at least 10,000 views. The smell of barbecue in the air made him hungry, but his attention was soon pulled away by a new system notification. The area boss had awakened. The death of one of its subordinates had alerted the boss of the intruder's presence. A hideous creature emerged before them. It looked like a skeleton, but with magical features. It was the level 40 golden skeleton. Herokiller was shocked to see it appear so soon. This was the boss of the Forest of the Dead, the first magical type boss introduced in the game. The golden skeleton was so powerful it was infamous as the #1 enemy of beginner players. When Herokiller saw it appear before him, he wondered if the condition for its spawn was indeed killing all the skeletons in the field. He had completely forgotten about that detail. Now there was no turning back. He knew the battle would be extremely difficult, but also that defeating it would bring great rewards. And above all, he knew how to take it down. Without wasting time, Herokiller tried to warn his skeletons to prepare for combat. However, the system informed him that all summons had vanished. The reason was simple. He was out of mana. At first, Herokiller was confused, but he quickly realized his mistake. Throughout the mission, he had used 4 skeletons, including the mage, and forced them all to use their powers to the maximum in order to kill the previous 100 enemies. But he hadn't bothered to manage his mana. Now, there was no choice left. He would have to face the golden skeleton completely alone. Seeing this as a chance to truly warm up, Herokiller activated the transformation of his special slot, summoning the power of the masked Black Knight. Transformed and ready for battle, he confidently charged at the boss, which was already beginning to cast its spell. Suddenly, the ground filled with magic circles and beams of light erupted everywhere, turning the arena into a real minefield. The number of safe zones to move in was almost non-existent. Herokiller immediately understood why that enemy was called the Newbie Killer. If the fight dragged on too long, he knew he would be doomed. The golden skeleton could simply keep spamming high-level skills until it wore him down. The only way out was to stop it from casting spells any further. With that in mind, Herokiller aimed at the boss's hands, which were casting spells, each pair controlling a different magic circle. He lunged at the enemy and managed to destroy one of the hands, causing one of the spells to vanish. 2 circles were still active. Determined, Herokiller swore he would crush every single hand of that skeleton until they turned to dust. But the boss wasn't predictable. The system warned Herokiller that the enemy had noticed his intentions and, in response, changed its strategy completely. With its remaining hands, the golden skeleton created a new magic seal in a different position. It was an even stronger spell, and Herokiller didn't remember ever seeing it before. A massive laser shot out in a straight line, destroying everything in its path. Herokiller was stunned, unable to understand where that attack had come from. He barely escaped by throwing himself to the side at the last second. Confusion struck him even harder. The Forest of the Dead now looked like a war zone. Could it be that he was remembering the boss's abilities incorrectly? Maybe the monster had been updated, just like the Minotaur, in more recent versions of the game. The truth was, it had been years since the last time Herokiller fought the golden skeleton, and a lot could have changed. The situation was critical. He was without his skeleton army and had lost his main battle plan. It was hard to imagine how he could win with so many factors against him. Still, Herokiller decided to fall back on what he did best: dodging. He began predicting the patterns of the beams and avoided the attacks using his speed and reflexes. However, he knew he couldn't keep that up forever. He needed an opening to counterattack. What he didn't expect was that the golden skeleton would also fight with its own hands. In a sudden move, the boss grabbed Herokiller and held him tightly. It was about to unleash another attack, a laser straight to the face. Trapped, Herokiller panicked. Just how many attack patterns did this monster have? But he still had one last trick up his sleeve. Herokiller activated the demonic curse, a special ability that reduced all of the enemy's attributes by 13%. With the boss's strength weakened, he managed to break free. Then, channeling all his power, he delivered a brutal hammer hammer strike to the golden skeleton's skull, shattering it completely. The system confirmed. The boss had been defeated. As a reward, Herokiller received 97,000 gold, earned the title Skeleton Slayer, and leveled up. But he wasn't calm. That fight had been pure hell. He knew that if he had hesitated even a little longer, he would have died right there. So, he asked the system to display his status. At the moment, he was level 36 with 9 titles, 109 strength, 35 stamina, 101 intelligence, and 141 magic. He was impressed to have jumped straight to level 36. It was excellent progress, but Herokiller knew that if things continued at this pace, everything would become dangerously risky. Now with 141 magic, his numbers weren't bad, but they still weren't enough to achieve what he truly wanted. Until now, he had managed to stack multiple experience multipliers and battle bonuses, but his build was clearly unbalanced. He had accumulated too many spells without enough mana to sustain them. He had invested heavily in strength to empower his skeleton warriors, but was starting to realize he could easily run out of resources in another tough battle, just like what had almost happened with the golden skeleton. The problem was that he had already obtained all possible titles that boosted magic, and at the moment, he had no money to buy better magical equipment. Still, Herokiller chose not to worry about that for now. His focus was to send the fight footage to Romani, reach level 40, and only then decide his next step. For now, what he really wanted was to savor a nice, juicy piece of meat. When Romani watched the recording, her reaction was explosive. So excited that she punched her pillow, asking in shock if it was even real. It was. That damned brat, as she called him admiringly, had defeated a monster of that level all by himself. What impressed her the most was the way he commanded his summons. Every movement was precise. To her, it was pure raw talent. Even though it was only the raw recording, Romani said it was so perfect, it didn't even need editing. Still, as a professional, she would prepare a final cut for him. The title she chose for the video would match the achievement, The Emperor of Solo Plays. Meanwhile, at the Bance Castle branch of the Monster Hunters Association, Herokiller showed up to meet Ahimri. He was back, stronger than ever, but the master, upon seeing him, asked if he had just crawled out of a dumpster, judging by the state he was in. Herokiller thought that, in a way, it was his fault, but chose not to comment. Instead, he asked to move straight on to the reward. Ahimri agreed and handed over the promised prize. Volume 2 of the Ambray Techniques, a rare book that granted the ability Skeletology. It was an advanced necromancy technique, impossible to obtain even with real money. Herokiller's proficiency in it was still at level F, but just by having the ability, all his skeletons received a 5% bonus to every attribute. On top of that, the mana cost for summoning was reduced by 10%, and he could now summon 1 extra skeleton. Herokiller was deeply grateful, fully aware of how valuable it was. But Ahimri had one more surprise. He had forged a new item using the corruption stone that Herokiller had brought earlier. He created a legendary accessory, the Corruption Tracker Ring. This ring belonged to the unique category, raising by +2 all class-related attributes, and, additionally, boosting all basic stats by +9. When combined with the other pieces of the Corruption Tracker set, the bonuses increased even further, raising stats by +21 to us. Herokiller was completely mesmerized by the item. To him, it was the most absurdly powerful reward obtainable from the game's main quest. He thanked Ahimri repeatedly, but the master quickly closed his hand and changed his tone. He said that, on second thought, he shouldn't hand over something so valuable so easily. Then he challenged Herokiller to take the ring, if he could. Herokiller got the message. He knew that NPC was dead serious and wouldn't hesitate to fight him. He activated his Coyote transformation, ready to accept the challenge. The battle was intense, but in the end, he claimed the ring and unlocked a new quest. Still catching his breath, he muttered that the old man was a lunatic, and if he weren't an NPC, he would have killed him right there. The new quest was explained by Ahimri. Recently, contact had been lost with an agent named Miggy, and it was up to Herokiller to travel to the dangerous Suryu Castle to investigate what had happened. The area was known for its extreme difficulty. It would be challenging enough just to get close to Miggy, let alone rescue her. Before leaving, Herokiller received an urgent message from Romani. The video of him defeating the golden skeleton had reached 2.3 million views, but to everyone's despair, it had only received 1,000 likes. It was a joke. Frustrated, Herokiller thought of a certain kind of person, the type who watches a video but doesn't like it, doesn't subscribe, doesn't comment. He said he hoped no one would do that to him because he hated those people. Watching without interacting? Unforgivable. Even so, when he checked the channel's statistics, Herokiller nearly fell over. The video had generated more than 1,000,000 won, an absurd amount. He celebrated, saying that now he could feast on a tomahawk steak, savor premium ribs, or enjoy any banquet he wanted. It was like winning the lottery. Overjoyed, he said there was no right time for anything. He would log out of the game and spend every last cent. But before he could, another notification arrived. It was a new donation, coming from someone who had been trying to contact him for a while. while. The notification came from a representative of the Thunder Hunters Guild, specifically their recruitment manager. He wanted to make a direct offer to Hirkan, but as soon as Hirkan saw which guild it was, his temper flared. It was the guild of the cursed Syl, the feared queen of thunder. He remembered clearly how, in his past life, she and her guild had been a true nightmare. Back then, when he refused their invitation to join, they began to hunt him down. A bunch of bitter idiots who couldn't accept a simple no. Hirkan thought that some people never change. Bad weeds never die. So once again, he refused without hesitation. He wasn't going to be part of that mess again. The situation was a true deja vu. He remembered the previous version of that story. Syl's persistence, her promises, the constant contacts, the repeated invitations. He had already said no more than 80 times. It was unbearable. Meanwhile, some of his mercenary friends mocked the situation. They said he was lucky to receive a proposal from the Thunder Hunters Guild, especially directly from Syl, who was rich, powerful, and influential. For them, it would be an honor. For Hirkan, it was nothing but a nightmare repeating itself. One of them commented that Hirkan was addicted to the game, and that whenever he joined a raid, players wouldn't stop talking about him. His level was completely beyond the others, but Hirkan was already fed up with the conversation. He said he didn't care if the salary was $1 million. He would never join that guild. He knew his own guild would grow in time, and the money would come naturally. He preferred peace alongside his true friends, rather than repeating the mistakes of the past. And it was precisely because of money that he had been betrayed before. Hirkan realized that it had been right in front of him all along, but now he saw it more clearly. He slapped himself in the face to wake up and swore he would not waste his money like an idiot. Instead, he would reinvest every coin to become even stronger. Without wasting time, he summoned his skeleton army again. They appeared already restless, asking where the golden skeleton was. Hirkan replied that he had already dealt with it while they were resting. Now they were going back to hellish training to improve movements, optimize attacks, and synchronize the group's actions. He wanted to know if they were ready for that. In his past life, if he had said something like that to his companions, he would have heard complaints. They would have asked for time, said they were tired. But his current skeletons weren't like those people. They accepted immediately. They were ready for the challenge. Hirkan thought that this time he had true allies. This time, everything would be different. They would become the best together. Their next destination was Suryu Castle, and they would already begin training along the way. The plan was simple: run to the castle. Anyone who fell behind would be left behind and beaten. The little skeleton sprinted at full speed without hesitation. Meanwhile, Syl was deep in thought. Casually seated atop a pile of slain dragons, creatures she had killed with her own power, she received one of her guild's subordinates, Heichi, who thanked her for the meeting. She asked him directly if there was any news regarding the mission of the corrupted power. Heichi replied that, unfortunately, there was no new information. They still hadn't figured out how to advance to the next stage of the mission. Syl was furious. She said that losing that mission to the Hydras had been a disgrace. He tried to ease the tension by saying they would soon find the answer. After all, they would be participating in the meeting with the 30 largest guilds in the game. But Syl was blunt. She said that a room full of idiots all talking at the same time wouldn't help at all. In any case, Heichi wished her a safe trip. Meanwhile, back in reality, Hirkan had paid off his debts. As usual, he spent the rest of his money in the game, investing in his own strength. Now, once again, he was broke. Not a single coin left in his account. But he didn't seem to care. He had more important things to do. It was time to test his new abilities. The first one was skin stitching, a passive skill that increased the player's defense by allowing monster parts to be grafted directly onto his skin. The magical skin he had created was durable, but it had a limit. If it suffered too much damage, it had to be replaced. That's why Hirkan decided to test it using the horn of a skeletal warrior. After grafting the horn onto his helmet, he received a 5-point bonus to passive defense. To check its effectiveness, he struck his own skin with his weapon and barely felt the impact. The result was far better than he expected. The next ability he tested was Curse of Sloth. This spell not only reduced the enemy's speed, but also limited their movements. The greater the number of targets and the wider the area of effect, the more mana it required. As usual, Hirkan tested the ability on his own summoned skeleton, which ended up almost completely paralyzed. He concluded that this spell would be extremely useful in battle. Then, Hirkan tested the rarest and most coveted ability, the summoning of a golem. This was considered one of the hardest spells to obtain, but also the most powerful among his options, as it allowed him to add a new member to his army. With this reinforcement, it finally felt like his choice to be a necromancer was paying off. The golem would be the perfect defensive tank for the group. In addition, Hirkan activated the copy mode, which made the golem mimic his movements. He believed that by combining his own speed and strength with this effect, the battle synergy would be perfect. However, when tested, the golem didn't reproduce the attack immediately. Confused, Herokiller began wondering if it was a bug in the game. A few seconds later, the golem repeated the move, but with a delay of more than 10 seconds. This frustrated him, and he blamed his bad luck. Meanwhile, an important meeting between the largest guilds in the game was about to begin. The guildmaster of Ares, Nergal, had summoned all the leaders, even though he knew they were extremely busy. Shev observed that, as always, only the usual faces had shown up. Burke, master of the Great Smile Guild, was anything but smiling. Syl, on the other hand, remained silent, thoughtful, and visibly displeased. Burke remarked that of the 29 people invited, only 4 had shown up. Shev replied that what was surprising was that anyone had shown up at all. It was extremely rare to see the leaders of all 30 guilds gathered, especially in the competitive environment of Warlord, where each guild was constantly fighting for resources and power. Nergal emphasized that this was unprecedented. The leaders never had time to sit and talk calmly, but the agenda this time was too serious to ignore. The Hydra Guild had discovered the true identity of the corrupt count and was preparing a final raid in 1 month. Shev admitted that this was a shocking revelation. None of the other guilds had even come close to finding a clue, but Hydra had nailed the mission. Burke warned that if Hydra captured the count, it would be the end for all the others. They would start monopolizing the game's main quests. When he tried to continue his speech, Syl cut him off and threatened to silence him once and for all. Burke asked if she wanted to fight. The atmosphere grew tense, but Shev tried to calm things down. Nergal intervened, stating that if the guilds kept fighting among themselves, their chances of defeating Hydra would plummet. Therefore, he proposed a temporary alliance among them. United, they would have a chance to stop Hydra's domination. Although none of them liked the idea, they all recognized there was no other option. Later, alone, Syl was bathing and reflecting. She thought she had joined a group of failures simply because she couldn't overcome the first boss of the first chapter. Even so, she knew that, for now, it was the only choice. If Hydra managed to complete the main quest, they would all be doomed. She decided to keep a low profile while planning her next move. During a call, she ordered all members of her guild to watch Hydra closely and report every action. She was determined to capture the corrupt count, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, Herokiller finally arrived at the Suryu Castle branch. There, he received a new mission that required him to travel to the Bovor forest. The problem was that the area was crawling with level 70 monsters, making it a death zone for any inexperienced adventurer. One of the officials warned that he would be killed the moment he set foot there. However, the same person insisted that precisely for that reason, they needed his help. As a disciple of Master Ahimri, Herokiller had the responsibility to complete this mission. Otherwise, he would lose the title of Corruption Tracker. He was shocked to learn that this was possible, but understood that the situation was too serious to back down now. Later, Herokiller sat reflecting on the choices he had made in his life. Everything felt like pure madness. His current mission was to find the missing agent Miggy, who had been investigating the mysterious Stone of Corruption. If he succeeded, he would receive 500 gold coins plus a bonus reward. However, there was also a penalty. If he failed to complete the mission within 29 days, he would lose the title of Corruption Tracker, and that meant, in practice, being disqualified from the main quest. Herokiller began to wonder why this mission was so difficult. He soon realized that all the missions he had accepted up to this point weren't really at his level. In fact, they were meant for players far stronger than him. The consequence was clear. He had ended up receiving a mission normally reserved for level 60 players and above. Not knowing exactly what to do, he realized he couldn't just abandon the main quest, but also knew that heading into the dangerous Bovor forest would be practically suicide. While trying to decide, Herokiller overheard a rumor in the plaza. They said the Hydra Guild was about to complete the main quest, and if they succeeded, they would become the #1 guild. Another person commented that the top 30 guilds wouldn't let that happen so easily, but someone raised a more important question. What would happen if all corruption-related quests were closed? That's when it struck Herokiller. Maybe he didn't need to go to Bovor Forest after all. Meanwhile, a group of Hydra scouts was approaching the enemy castle. They were confident they were close to the final stage of the quest. Among them was Natal, Hydra's 8th in command, who was eager for the rewards that would come once they defeated the corrupt count. They were certain this would push the guild to the top of the rankings. However, Nathan reminded him not to celebrate too early. Nothing was over yet. Their mission was only to observe the castle in secret. Any leaked information could ruin everything, so they had to be extremely professional. Suddenly, a man appeared, calling out for Natal. It was Kims, the 3rd-ranked member of the Red Bulls Guild, who casually showed up claiming he was just farming nearby. According to him, there was a powerful boss in the area he had been wanting to fight for some time. He asked if Natal wasn't there for the same reason. Trying to play it off, Natal answered yes, but his expression expression betrayed his nerves. Kim's mocked him, saying he looked like someone desperate to use the bathroom. Natal's subordinate, Nor, tried to deny it and keep their composure, but had to hold Natal back before he snapped. In truth, Kim's was a double agent. By confirming the presence of Hydra's 8th in command on the cliffside, he was sure the intel he had received earlier was accurate. Mission leader Shev was also surprised, as this proved the anonymous source's location was real. Still, the doubt remained. Why would anyone give away such critical information for free? Shev suspected it might be someone inside Hydra seeking revenge, but Kim's replied that the reason didn't matter. What mattered was that the information was confirmed. He asked if they could make a move, stir things up right there, but Shev refused. He said that if that place truly was the corrupt Count's castle, then Hydra's full firepower was concentrated there. They couldn't afford a reckless action. Besides, Kim's couldn't risk dying in that location. However, before they could react, Kim's was suddenly attacked. It was too late. He had been exposed, and his attacker was none other than Hahui, the Thunder Princess, a member of the Thunder Hunters Guild. She demanded that he confess everything, threatening him severely. Meanwhile, Hirkin continued training his golem against a bear. The golem's attacks were slow but extremely resilient. His little skeletons watched the fight as if they were enjoying a show. On the other side, Hirkin was still waiting. No message had come after he leaked confidential information. With no response, he began thinking that maybe the only way to complete his mission without going to Beauvoir Forest was to force the end of the main quest itself. This quest, known as the main storyline of Warlord, was divided into several chapters. At the moment, everyone was stuck in the first, the corrupt Count. And now, with so many forces at play, the course of history was about to change. The moment the corrupt Count was defeated, the current chapter of the main quest would end. That meant all related quests would be automatically canceled. Hirkin knew there was no way he could reach level 70, meet all the requirements, and still defeat the final boss within 30 days, or less, considering Hydra was already targeting the Count's castle. For him, the smartest move was to use the remaining time to prepare for the next chapter. That's why he secretly hoped someone would just kill that damn Count already and end this phase once and for all. Suddenly, Hirkin received a system notification. Hydra's official channel had started a live stream. At that very moment, his golem was about to lose the fight against the bear, so he stepped in with a direct strike to the animal's head, ending the battle quickly. He just wanted to watch the stream in peace. Even the golem itself stopped to watch. On the broadcast, Hydra made an official announcement. They were about to reveal the true identity of the corrupt Count, as well as announce the date of the final raid. Excitement surged through Hirkin, who hoped the attack would happen within the month. When they revealed the date, he learned the raid would begin in 3 days. It wasn't exactly what he wanted, but it was still within his time frame. In the following days, life returned to routine. Hirkin continued training his golem by sending it against bears. Still, he started to worry seriously about Hydra, recognizing that they were far ahead of the other guilds. Their players were highly prepared and seemed unstoppable. However, once the main quest was over, his own problems would also disappear. Things would become easier. But 3 days later, the unthinkable happened. Hydra's raid failed. Hirkin couldn't believe it. It made no sense. He had expected the guild to have a solid plan after all their big promises. He was frustrated, feeling he might have overestimated them. Now, he would need to rethink his entire strategy. Then the Red Bulls launched a new live stream. Hirkin knew this was the Guild of the Chief Slayer, and they were there precisely for this moment. If Hydra failed, they would take over. The Red Bulls members were ready to face the enemies who had defeated Hydra and were also planning to start the final raid. Hirkin wondered if they would really go through with it, as it required enormous responsibility. But then, something unexpected happened. Syl, known as the Thunder Queen, appeared alongside the Red Bulls, accompanied by her guild, the Thunder Hunters. They had formed an alliance. The story then revealed the events that had led up to this. During a private conversation, Shev had expressed his surprise at seeing her there. He said she was the last person he expected to encounter at that moment and asked if this was a declaration of war. But Syl denied it. She said she wasn't there as an enemy, but as an ally. Shev questioned if she was certain about that, since one of her members had attacked one of his men. She answered that they were only trying to be friendly and that it was nothing but a misunderstanding, but she quickly cut off any small talk, saying she wanted to discuss the raid. She was already aware of all the information about the operation and knew that Red Bulls had rushed to the castle in silence. She had noticed everything. Shev confirmed that they had received a tip, but didn't know who had sent the intel. Then, Syl made a straightforward proposal. She asked why they didn't join forces to raid the corrupt Count together. She believed that if they united, they would be the first to conquer the castle. At that moment, Shev thought she was just bluffing, but now, with everything laid out before him, he He recognized that she was truly skilled. The alliance was sealed, and so Shev, together with his allies, stood face to face with the corrupt Count, the final boss of the first chapter of the main quest. The enemy appeared arrogantly, declaring he would crush all those pathetic beings. The front lines of both guilds, Red Bulls and Thunder Hunters, struggled to withstand the pressure from the countless monsters. The final battle had begun. The Red Bulls' troops were in trouble. They couldn't hold on much longer against the Count's attacks, and Syl was already starting to worry. For every tentacle she cut, another appeared in its place. The fight seemed endless. That was when Shev decided to clear a path for her to strike directly. With great skill, Syl dodged all of the Count's blows with ease and closed in to finish the fight. However, she was struck head-on, pierced by numerous tentacles. Even so, she survived, broke free, and with a precise slash, cut the corrupt Count's face in half. Shev, witnessing this, admitted that Syl was far more terrifying than he had ever imagined. With victory assured, the Red Bulls and Thunder Hunters guilds defeated the final boss of the chapter. Upon hearing the news, Hirkan wondered if it had truly been Syl who cleared the dungeon. But he didn't care. To him, what mattered was that it was finally over. It didn't matter who landed the final blow. She could celebrate all she wanted. That would be the last joy of her life. They may have won that battle, but he still believed he would be the true winner of the war. A few days later, Hirkan was already in trouble again, wondering why this always happened to him. Hours earlier, he had entered a locked field in the mountains. He knew that place only opened when certain conditions were met. The entrance was restricted, but he was well aware of it. It was the area where the second chapter of the main quest began. As soon as the corrupt Count was defeated, access to the location had been unlocked for all players. However, Hirkan had been the first to enter, which granted him a bonus, 2 points in all attributes and 1 additional point in class-related stats. Excited, he told his little skeletons it was their time to shine. But immediately afterward, he was surrounded by multiple level 60 wild boars. The problem was that Hirkan was still only level 41. Those boars were extremely aggressive monsters that always moved in packs. He had no chance in a direct fight, so he ran desperately, cursing his luck. Still, he knew he couldn't waste time there. After all, he was the only one so far who had discovered that hidden path. His chances of success were slim, but he wanted to try. He placed a magic bomb on each skeleton's head and ordered them to attack the boars. All of the skeletons were destroyed in seconds, but that was part of the plan. It was a trap. Taking advantage of the distraction, Hirkan cast a slowing curse to immobilize the enemies. He was ready to strike, but then tripped on a banana peel and fell flat on his face. The culprit was an armored monkey that loved pulling pranks on humans. Because of that, the curse's effect ended, and he was nearly caught by the beasts. Fortunately, someone saved him. A mysterious figure appeared, firing powerful arrows at the boars. It was a hunter NPC who approached Hirkan. He had been saved by the skin of his teeth. Meanwhile, in Suryu Castle, a group observed closely a man wearing a full set of white mamba armor. He had arranged a meeting with his informant. He asked Michelle if he had discovered who leaked the information about the Count, but Michelle replied no. None of the major guilds knew. They were dealing with someone who had learned the corrupt Count's identity before anyone else, and had given away that information for free. Finding this person would be a difficult task. When asked about the so-called Ha-Ho mask, Michelle said he was still just posting simple videos of himself hunting monsters. And it was clear that a beginner like that couldn't possibly know something so advanced. Still, Michelle remarked that he knew the man would be busy from now on. The other speaker then said he would handle it personally and provide support, while Michelle focused on finding that individual. He didn't know who it was, but he was certain he had to make him pay, as he believed this person was destroying the balance of the world. And ironically, at that very moment, the one responsible for all this imbalance was inside the hunter's cabin. Hirkan had been incredibly lucky. The NPC who saved him was none other than Ma Wuang, the central character of the second chapter's quest. Ma Wuang was extremely skilled. He had once been the prince's personal instructor, but was expelled after a tragic event. After that, he became captain of the Forest Watchers, who were responsible for protecting the Bulka's mountains. He was the key to starting the second chapter of the main quest. And now, Hirkan's destiny was about to change once again. Hirkan truly was lucky to meet Ma Wuang, but the old hunter didn't seem too excited. He told him he should go back where he came from, since that region was filled with dangerous monsters. He didn't know what had brought Hirkan there, but he warned him. It was better to leave before something strange happened. That was when Hirkan revealed what had really brought him there. He said that the corrupt Count was dead. That was exactly the information Ma Wuang needed to hear. He confirmed that even with the Count defeated, the corruption was still spreading. He was investigating the cause and had ended up in that region. He asked if Ma Wuang had any idea what might be happening. Ma Wuang replied that he did. He had a hypothesis, though little evidence. He asked if Hirkan could help him with that. As a reward, Hirkan received the title, the first to make contact with the Protector of Bulkas, gaining 14 points in all attributes. He was thrilled with that. He loved titles, and this questline was getting better and better. Hirkan accepted without hesitation. Wuang, in turn, asked him to calm down and explain the mission. He would have to investigate the monsters in the Bulka's mountains and defeat 50 of them. In exchange, he would receive 500 gold coins and Wuang's trust. Upon leaving the cabin, Herokiller thought that he needed to level up anyway. He decided to leave the stronger monsters for later, when he had better prepared warriors. For now, he would start with the weakest one, that damn monkey. Now he would have his revenge. Meanwhile, the armored monkey was happily knocking down several NPCs with banana peels. That was what made him the happiest. But then Herokiller appeared silently at his side, determined to defeat him. He tried every kind of attack, but the little monkey dodged them with ease, making Herokiller furious. He realized the only way to defeat such a quick creature was with a surprise attack. Since the monkey used the trees of the forest to move swiftly, a direct attack would be useless. So, Herokiller pretended to miss a strike by throwing his sword. The monkey started laughing, but that was just a distraction. At the right moment, the golem appeared and delivered a powerful blow that exploded everything around, defeating the monkey once and for all. Herokiller celebrated and decided he would hunt down all the others. Meanwhile, the media's attention was entirely on the Thunder Hunters and Red Bull's guilds. During an interview, Syl said they had been lucky this time, but promised to keep striving for great results. However, those words were just a facade. Later, Syl was furious. The Princess of Thunder boasted that she had defeated the corrupt Count with her own power, but Syl knew it had only been possible thanks to the Red Bull's support. If she wanted to achieve complete victory, she would need the help of one specific person, the Heiho Mask. That's why she ordered Hat to be called immediately, because there was someone they needed to find. Meanwhile, after so many battles against the monkeys, Herokiller saw his sword finally break. He acknowledged that was the weapon's limit. It made sense. It was indeed time to get new equipment. The problem was that he had already spent all his money. With no other choice, he decided to try hunting gems. Monster gems were extremely rare. They served as material for crafting special equipment and, depending on the monster defeated, could provide additional attributes. For example, the Green Goblin gem gave 1 extra point in dexterity, while the Werewolf gem gave 2 points in attack. Herokiller knew that the Armored Monkey's gem was used to craft equipment, and that motivated him even more. He gathered his army and announced that from that moment on, they would hunt all the armored monkeys. However, after 9 straight hours of fighting, not a single gem dropped. He began to wonder why. He only needed one, but none appeared. That was when a man in armor appeared before him. He asked if he was the Heiho Mask. Herokiller noticed that the guy wore an incredibly expensive armor made from flaming lizard scales and wielded a warrior orc's sword. Judging by the gear, he had to be at least level 70. He was probably part of that strange group wandering around. The man confidently introduced himself as Coyote and struck an exaggerated pose, like a tokusatsu character. He said he was there to challenge him to an official duel because he had heard a lot about him in recent weeks. According to him, Herokiller had become famous on YouTube, and defeating the Heiho Mask would be enough to make him popular too. In Herokiller's mind, Coyote was just another loser desperate for attention. And honestly, he was too busy to deal with that right now. Herokiller was already extremely irritated for not having gotten any gems so far, but before he could take out his frustration on another monkey, Coyote appeared insisting on a fight, and even offered 5,000 gold coins for the duel. It was too good an offer to refuse. Herokiller accepted without thinking twice. He was in a great mood despite his anger. Coyote considered himself the hero of justice within the game. In every game he had ever played, he had always been the center of attention. He was the charismatic character, the praised one, the favorite. But in Warlord, that didn't happen. Nobody paid attention to him. Everyone's eyes were fixed solely on the Heiho Mask. He was the one everyone talked about, the one in the videos, the streams, the conversations. This left Coyote deeply frustrated. He felt forgotten, ignored. But everything changed when, by chance, he came across the Heiho Mask during a hunt. That's when he got the idea. If he could defeat him and post the video, he would finally get the attention he had always sought. When Coyote challenged Herokiller, he did something unexpected. He stripped down to nothing but his underwear. Herokiller, shocked, could only think about what the hell that lunatic was doing, standing there half naked. Coyote explained that he wanted a fair fight. He knew Herokiller had a broken sword and didn't want to win just because of superior equipment. He wanted a balanced duel, man-to-man, with no advantages. But Herokiller wasn't convinced in the slightest. He wondered how he was supposed to take seriously someone who showed up to fight like that. Without patience, Coyote rushed in. Herokiller only dodged, not paying much attention. That began to irritate his opponent, who demanded a real fight. But Herokiller was still too bothered by the scene to focus properly. That's when Coyote used his first ability, a speed boost that accelerated his movements. With it, he landed a powerful strike and sent Herokiller flying. Herokiller recognized the ability immediately. It was the classic warrior's charge boost. He knew that Coyote might be an idiot, but he was also of a much higher level. In a direct fight, he wouldn't stand a chance. So, he decided to act smart. He stood up and pretended to be ready for a proper fight. And at the very moment Coyote prepared his next attack, Herkin threw mud into his eyes, tripped him, and began beating him mercilessly. While the blinded Coyote complained that it was cowardly, Herkin replied that there was no such thing as cowardice when fighting for your life. He said Coyote would lose precisely because he clung too much to this idea of honor and fair duels. To finish it, Herkin grafted onto his own skin the attack patterns of the armored monkey. With this new power, he prepared a potentially fatal strike, and he told Coyote that since he had started this fight, now he would have to bear the consequences. Desperate, Coyote begged him to stop. He said he surrendered, pleading for him to end it. That's when Herkin caused an explosion by striking the tree where Coyote was leaning. The impact was so strong, so realistic, that Coyote almost forgot it was a game. The immersion was total. Herkin, calm, simply declared victory and demanded the 5,000 gold. Instead of being angry, Coyote was amazed. He said it was incredible. He admitted defeat and, in addition to the promised coins, handed over his sword as well. Herkin recognized the item immediately. It was a hero orc's sword worth at least 15,000 gold coins. Perplexed, he asked why he was giving that too. Coyote replied that he wanted to offer it as a token of gratitude. He said he had spent too much time trying to be popular, chasing attention, and had forgotten the most important thing, to truly grow stronger. And it was thanks to Herkin that he finally understood that. Still in his underwear, Coyote smiled and said that Herkin had earned the right to become his brother. And even without knowing whether he was serious or not, Herkin could only think how strange it was to receive such an expensive sword in that way. Herkin watched Coyote leave and thought that, despite seeming like an idiot, he was actually a decent guy. Not that he would ever say that out loud. Instead, he kicked the guy in the crotch and ordered his little skeleton to beat him up as a farewell. Even so, Coyote left, saying he would return stronger and worthy of becoming Heiho Mask's brother-in-arms. One day, he promised, they would meet again. Herkin laughed to himself. He thought the guy was kind of an idiot, but at least he genuinely enjoyed the game. And, in the end, he had gotten an incredible sword. With it in hand, he could continue his mission, or maybe just go around killing another 100 of those armored monkeys. However, his little skeleton soon noticed a new problem. Herkin was addicted to gambling. They tried to stop him, but it was too late. The new weapon, the hero orc's sword, granted plus 66 strength and stamina, and ignored 9% of monster defense. With this weapon, Herkin was unstoppable. After a few days, he had already accumulated impressive results. 950 armored monkeys, 104 wolves, and 76 poisonous lizards killed. Wuang was impressed. He said Herkin had done an excellent job and that the investigation was progressing well thanks to him. However, he noticed a strange expression on Herkin's face and asked what it was. Herkin replied that he was just thinking about how he would spend all the money he had saved up. But Wuang changed the subject and asked him to pay attention to a new map. He explained that the next mission was especially dangerous. Near the mountain peak, a warrior bear had appeared. These monsters were about 4 meters tall, wore full armor, and wielded huge scimitars. The objective was to discover where these bears were getting their equipment. This information could help track the source of the corruption. Herkin understood the mission. He needed to defeat the bears and bring back their weapons. Simple and straightforward. Wuang, however, asked if he was going alone. He said that would be suicide, but Herkin, as confident as always, assured him he knew exactly how to deal with those monsters. Soon after, he began preparing. He followed the map until he reached the mission zone, and before starting the fight, did a quick stretch. He opened the player auction system and searched for the best items he could buy with the money he had. He ended up acquiring the full snake and skeleton set, which granted plus 70 defense, plus 34 mana, plus 34 strength, and even reduced mana consumption by 10%. In total, he spent 37,096 gold coins, but told himself that this was the true taste of money well spent. He also acquired several other new skills. Although still below the ideal level to face a warrior bear, his preparation was bringing him closer and closer to that goal. It was then that his little skeleton spoke up, demanding their share. They wanted to know what they would get. Herkin smiled and replied that, of course, he would buy something for them. However, the system notified him that he had very little gold left. The skeletons were outraged. Herkin tried to justify himself, saying it wasn't on purpose, and promised that as soon as he earned more money, the first thing he would do was buy upgrades for them. In the meantime, he sent the troop out to hunt more. He thought to himself how lucky it was that a boar had shown up at just the right time, and after hours of hunting, only the last boar remained. now crying for mercy, while the skeletons were thirsty for gold and completely out of control. Herokiller decided it was time to stop wasting time and finish off the monster. But before he could act, someone else appeared and killed the boar. Soon after, a man approached, demanding to know who had authorized Herokiller to hunt in that area, claiming it belonged to the Apollo Guild. To Herokiller, it was just another bunch of idiots trying to assert themselves. 3 members of the guild tried to show off, but ended up being quickly defeated by him. The only one of the 3 who still had hair tried to threaten him, saying he would regret going against the Apollo Guild. Somewhere else, the guild leader was stroking a tiger when he received the news of the attack on his subordinates. Unshaken, he tossed a gold bar at one of them and ordered them to bring the man back alive. He wanted him to pay for underestimating his name. Meanwhile, Herokiller finally arrived at his true objective, the area where the warrior bear had appeared. However, his skeletons started striking weird poses, and he had to smack each of them to make them focus. This would be an important fight. The bear was level 70 and had 3 different phases, so they needed to be well prepared. If they won, Herokiller would surpass the top 30 guilds in the progression of the main quest. There was no room for mistakes. They would follow the plan exactly as they had trained. At that moment, the warrior bear emerged, but Herokiller had already activated his Sloshin, determined to complete the mission alone. Elsewhere, Heichi from the Thunder Hunters Guild grumbled about being assigned the task of hunting down a beginner player. He questioned why he, one of the 5 most powerful mages in the game, had to do such a thing. He was interrupted by a surprise attack from a wild boar king, but defeated it with ease and muttered that the Heiho mask had better show up soon. Meanwhile, Herokiller recalled his past attempts at defeating that same bear. In his previous life, he had failed 6 times, even with guild support. Now, he couldn't afford to fail. He had to strike the bear's vulnerable points, the spots without armor, and had prepared a specific skill just for this situation. He warned his skeletons to follow the training when he gave the signal. His new passive skill, muscle modification, greatly increased his speed and strength. However, when he used it, his jump was so powerful that he overshot the bear entirely. The creature didn't even understand what was happening and crushed all of Herokiller's skeletons. He realized he couldn't control the skill very well, but still managed to tear off part of the bear's armor. Even without landing a truly effective strike, he kept fighting. He dodged attacks and used the bone bomb, but the explosion barely scratched the bear, leaving it only slightly singed. Seeing that direct damage wasn't working, Herokiller abandoned that strategy. He resummoned his army of skeletons and decided to fight as a true necromancer. The skeletons, however, seemed doubtful. Even so, Herokiller assured them that this time, everything would go according to plan. To reinforce his strategy, he also summoned his golem. When the bear counterattacked the creature, Herokiller activated the golem's body strengthening, causing the bear's blade to get stuck in it, creating the perfect opening for the next move. The 3 little skeletons attacked simultaneously, dealing good damage to the bear. Herokiller mentioned that he still had one last big move, though it hadn't come yet. But the next fire pillar, cast by the skeleton mage, ended up hitting not only the bear, but also Herokiller himself. He grew furious, thinking his own ally was trying to kill him too. At that moment, the bear roared fiercely, activating its war cry skill and recovering 50% of its HP. That was the sign that the second phase of the fight had begun. Herokiller abandoned any strategic plan and decided to rely purely on brute force. He summoned multiple bone bombs, creating a chain of explosions that looked like a small atomic blast. He kept throwing bombs like a madman without stopping. Sometime later, the bear finally fell. The victory granted him plenty of experience points, 100,000 in gold, and completion of the quest related to Wuang. He reflected on how difficult this fight had been in his previous life, but now he had defeated it alone. This only confirmed he hadn't been wrong about himself. He thanked his skeletons, telling them they had done a great job, and ordered everyone to return to Wuang, where they would begin the next quest. The skeletons, however, grumbled among themselves that he hadn't really fought properly, that he behaved like a coward. Herokiller pretended to ignore them, but warned that he could hear everything. Meanwhile, in a tavern in the Bulkus region, Heichi was worried. He still hadn't found the Haho mask, even after days of searching the mountain. To make matters worse, the Haho mask's video had gone viral, and now the mountain was full of curious players, making the mission even harder. He felt he would return empty-handed, and feared the reaction of Syl, his leader. After all, they had sent him to look for someone across an entire mountain completely alone. Then the phone rang. It was Syl herself, saying she understood she had gone too far. She admitted sending him alone was too much, and that it must have been difficult for him. Heichi, touched, thought he might be able to return, but Syl informed him he would remain on the mission, as reinforcements were on the way. At that moment, someone smashed through the tavern wall. It was Hahui, known as the Thunder Princess. Annoyed, she shouted that, thanks to Heichi, she had also been dragged into that mess. He could only think about how much he hated that job. Later, Herokiller also noticed that Bulkus was much busier. It was expected, since everyone had realized that the main quest continued in that place. Determined not to waste time, time, he quickly returned to meet with Wuang. On the way, he ran into the 3 members of the Apollo Guild, the same ones he had defeated earlier. He thought there would be another fight, but the 3 were fleeing. However, in the middle of their escape, they were intercepted by none other than Hahui herself. Herokiller recognized the group immediately. Hahui looked straight at him and asked if he was the Haho Mask. He knew very well who she was, the number 2 of the Thunder Hunters Guild, nicknamed the Thunder Princess or even the Mad Dog. She was extremely loyal and would do anything for the guild. Beside her stood Haichi, whose in-game nickname was Ballista, one of the strongest mages in existence. In his past life, those two had already been a huge nuisance, and now they were showing up again. Herokiller realized they were after the Haho Mask, probably to recruit him, just like before. He even considered killing them right there, but he knew that wasn't possible with his current level of power, so he decided to simply pretend he didn't know anything. But Hahui didn't believe him. She said he was lying. If he was in Bulkas, there was no point pretending he didn't know about the Haho Mask, since his video had already surpassed 20 million views. That was way too suspicious. She pressed further, asking if he wasn't actually the Haho Mask himself. Before the conversation escalated, Heichi interrupted, saying that wasn't the problem. The problem was Hahui, who had destroyed a tavern and an inn, killing several people along the way just because she thought they were suspicious. But they weren't. Now, someone would have to clean up the mess. He said everyone knew their guild's reputation, and they couldn't just go around causing trouble like that. Heichi ordered Hahui to apologize. Grumbling, she apologized and asked Herokiller if he was happy now. Heichi also apologized more politely, showing respect. But the next instant, Hahui suddenly punched Herokiller hard in the face, and since he didn't react, he was sent flying. Heichi asked if Hahui was insane and why she did that. She answered that she expected Herokiller to dodge, but Herokiller, still indignant, questioned if that was how a famous guild treated an innocent person. He put on his nerd glasses, switched to provocateur mode, and announced he was going to record everything. He said he would report the guild, starting with a community post declaring that they were evil. However, Heichi quickly handed him some gold as compensation, ending the discussion. Still irritated, Herokiller accepted the money. It wasn't ideal, but it was the best he could do at that moment. He knew it wasn't yet the right time to get involved with the Thunder Hunters Guild. He just had to wait a little longer until he was truly ready to face them. On the way back, Heichi scolded Hahui, asking why she always caused problems wherever she went. He reminded her that she was part of a large guild and needed to protect their reputation. She couldn't keep acting like a lunatic all the time, but Hahui defended herself, saying it was natural for someone to dodge when attacked. The problem was that Herokiller didn't even try to avoid the punch. He just looked away as if disappointed or angry, which made her suspicious. Even so, Heichi asked her please, not to cause any more trouble. Meanwhile, Herokiller continued to Wuang with a piece of the warrior bear's armor to prove he had completed the mission. Wuang was relieved and sincerely thanked him, saying that the mountain would now be safer. He also asked if Herokiller was all right, but Herokiller was in a hurry and very nervous. He said it was better to move quickly, since other guilds were lurking. Wuang then opened a chest and told him he could choose one of the rewards inside. They were maps he had created himself while exploring the Bulkas Mountains. Herokiller quickly realized these were far more than simple maps. They were real treasure maps, marking the location of several dungeons, allowing him to collect all the hidden rewards inside them. But there was a condition. To receive one of those maps, he would have to do one more favor. According to Wuang, there were reports of even stronger monsters appearing in the mountain, and he needed Herokiller to investigate the Purong Forest area. Though he looked displeased, Herokiller replied that it was fine. Outside, however, he was clearly annoyed. The Purong Forest was a level 90 area, which meant he needed to level up again. He thought about heading to the Sura Canyon, where there were level 75 demons, perfect for fast experience gain. After all, after defeating a warrior bear, hunting a few demons didn't seem that complicated. But when he arrived at the canyon, he was surprised to see Shev, the killer, in that area. Something felt off. Meanwhile, Heichi was once again in contact with Sil, saying he couldn't stand dealing with that troublesome girl anymore. But Sil thanked him for his effort, even amidst his complaints. Heichi insisted he wasn't just complaining to get out of the mission. The real problem was that the Red Bulls Guild had already taken control of the Sura Canyon. Given that, he suggested they should stop pushing that task and focus directly on the main quest. Sil agreed. She said that the strongest players would now start to cross paths and revealed she was curious to see how long the Haho Mask could keep escaping from her, because sooner or later she would catch him. That's how everything reached this point. Herokiller, disguised as the Haho Mask, was in the canyon killing a level 75 demon goat and had just leveled up to 62. He thought the leveling pace was great. Soon he would be ready to enter the Purong Forest. But at that moment, he noticed unwanted followers behind him. They were obsessed players, literally in love with the Heiho mask, chasing after him like crazy fans. Herokiller couldn't believe he had ended up in such a ridiculous situation, being hunted by a horde of fanatics, while all he wanted was to level up in peace. After posting the video of him defeating the warrior bear alone, Herokiller saw the recording spread across the entire community. The video went viral again, and he was extremely happy about it. But the happiness didn't last long. The consequences appeared right after. He couldn't concentrate anymore, nor stay alone anywhere. He was being recognized in every corner of the game. Realizing he couldn't continue there, he decided to change his plans. He told the skeletons they would immediately head to the Sura Canyon. The monsters in that area were stronger, but they could handle it. It was there that Herokiller ended up running into Shev the killer, and wondered why he was showing up just now. Shev recognized him and commented that he was the kid from the starter village. He said he was still embarrassed that Herokiller had left last time without even saying goodbye, but admitted that he had leveled up fast. Just a few months earlier, he was still in the beginner's village, and now he was here, in the Sura Canyon. He questioned what Herokiller was doing in a place like that, since a player that strong should be farming in more advanced areas. Herokiller wanted to know why Shev was there too. He explained that the Red Bulls had started to take over the entire canyon, because they wanted to get closer to where the main quest would take place. That worried Herokiller. But Shev didn't stop there. He said that, in fact, he was there because he hoped to meet the famous Heiho mask. That left Herokiller shocked. Shev said he had seen the video where the Heiho mask fought the warrior bear and thought it was amazing. He asked if Herokiller wasn't curious to meet him too, but Herokiller just apologized and ran away. As he fled, he thought about how everything was getting out of control. First Seoyeon, now Shev, and soon it would be the top 30 guilds of the game coming after him. At this rate, he would never be able to farm in peace. He knew he needed to find a more isolated place. That's when he remembered the map he had received from Ma Wuang. Using the coordinates, he managed to locate a hidden dungeon beneath a beautiful waterfall. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but believed the risk would be worth it. He dove in, but realized he only had 20 seconds of breath. Swimming fast, he found the submerged entrance, and with just 1 second of air left, managed to get inside the secret dungeon. Upon arriving, he received 2 titles. The first to discover the secret, and Dungeon Explorer. He felt accomplished, knowing he had made the right choice. If he was being hunted outside, the best thing to do was to hide in some closed place, but he had no idea what he would find there. He knew that, being a secret dungeon, he would face difficult enemies. The first monster that appeared, however, was just a simple slime. Everyone felt awkward. Even the skeletons stared at it in silence. Herokiller ordered them to finish it off quickly, considering it a weak enemy. But then the slime began to radiate flames from within. Herokiller recognized it immediately. It was a spirit-type monster. These monsters were rare in Warlord, and the items they dropped were usually used to craft elemental equipment. Seeing a big opportunity, Herokiller ordered a full-force attack. He was excited about the possible profit. The problem was that the fire slime called for help. Its partner appeared, a level 70 spirit salamander, a mid-rank monster. With just 1 fireball, it obliterated everything in front of it. The attack was so intense that Herokiller was stunned. He knew he had no other choice but to fight it seriously, and that fired him up. To prepare for this, he set up his new skill combo. On his main skeleton, he equipped the Helm of Insanity, the bone armor, and used the empowerment with the Black Orc Skull, an item he had purchased at an auction. The fusion of these items transformed the skeleton into the Skeleton Knight, a much more powerful version. The result was impressive. The new skeleton was so fast that, in the blink of an eye, it turned the salamander into pieces. Herokiller was proud and, with a smile, asked what the others thought of his Skeleton Knight's performance. Later, an entire horde of salamanders appeared, but all of them were effortlessly destroyed by Herokill's new creation. While the Skeleton Knight struck poses for the little skeletons, Herokiller thought about how good it felt to farm automatically. Now that he had evolved his main skeleton, he could simply stand still while the monsters fell. The rewards were worth it too. The salamander essence had a much higher value than he expected. The reward obtained with the salamander essence was more than enough for his next upgrade. Herokiller knew he just needed to keep doing that until all his skeletons had evolved. Determined, he said the group would continue on this path until they were ready to reach the Purung forest. About an hour later, he realized it wouldn't be that simple. He came across an imminent dungeon, a dungeon within another dungeon, something extremely rare. Herokiller had no idea that existed inside, and now there was no turning back. If he failed, he would be penalized with 2 days locked out of the game. That represented a huge setback. Even so, he had no choice. He decided to trust entirely in luck and stepped into the portal. On the other side, he found a throne room. Statues Images of knights and abandoned armors filled the place. Everything looked ancient, but the armors bore battle scars as if they had once fought. That made it even stranger. On the throne rested a headless creature about to awaken. Herokiller quickly ordered his skeletons to take defensive positions, but he wasn't fast enough. Within seconds, all the little skeletons had their heads cut off. Before him stood the Spiritual Knight, a level 80 monster with extremely advanced combat intelligence. Herokiller had faced this enemy in his past life, and even with all the help from the Haho Mask Guild, they had been completely massacred. They didn't stand a chance. But now, he couldn't allow that to happen again. Without hesitation, he resummoned all his skeletons and declared that they would force a direct attack. The battle started intensely. One of the skeletons was struck before it could dodge. Herokiller tried to capitalize on the opening along with his skeleton knight, while another skeleton searched for a chance to strike. The blade hit the enemy, but it didn't do much damage. When he tried to warn his skeleton, it was already too late. It was burned to ashes by spiritual flames. Herokiller realized that the enemy's heart wasn't a vital point and began questioning himself. His ordinary skeletons or golems wouldn't be useful here. Then he remembered a conversation from his past life when one of his friends asked how he had the guts to face a monster 10 times bigger head-on, and he had answered that if he had to give a reason, it was simple. If I don't beat this guy, there's no dinner tonight. Now, facing the Spiritual Knight, Herokiller shouted that he would never lose to that enemy. He said he had been in this game for too long, and that if it wasn't with a critical hit, then he would win with ordinary damage. But with each attack, the knight's speed increased. At one point, he was pierced straight through, but it was only his cape. It was a trick. The false opening created the chance for his skeleton knight to tear off the enemy's hand, the one holding the sword. Herokiller reaffirmed there would be no dinner if he didn't defeat it. Later, in the village of Sura Canyon, the place was much more crowded than usual. Chief Aiel commented that it was thanks to their guild's presence, which improved the region's safety. Shev replied that he hoped the Haho Mask would appear there too. Airel complained, saying he couldn't stand hearing that name anymore. He didn't understand Shev's obsession, since the guy only went around killing low-level monsters. But Shev disagreed. To them, those monsters were weak, but to the Haho Mask, they were much stronger enemies. That was precisely why he was so impressive, because he could defeat alone what normally required an entire party. That, he said, was the true power of the Haho Mask. After strengthening his allies with a buff, Herokiller warned them that there would be no dinner if they did not defeat the enemy. The creature, which was missing one arm, regenerated the limb using spiritual flames, demonstrating its recovery ability. Herokiller commented, annoyed, that this kind of thing was exactly what made that enemy so troublesome for him. Even so, he took a deep breath and advanced together with his warrior skeleton. The enemy knight counterattacked with his flaming sword, destroying pieces of the arena floor, while Herokiller and his skeleton climbed the edges to continue the battle. They managed to get close and land good hits, but the enemy's armor was extremely resistant, forcing them to keep attacking for quite some time. Herokiller thought he just needed to keep piling up damage like that in order to win before the knight awakened more flames. When that happened, the enemy created a whirlwind of fire and pressured Herokiller with violent attacks. The knight's combat pattern had completely changed. The moment Herokiller managed to prepare a counterattack and called his skeleton over, he ended up being hit directly in the chest. The blow was so strong that part of his mask broke. He had been so focused on controlling the skeletons that he forgot to protect himself. He was nearly sliced in half, but his warrior skeleton stepped in front of the blow and was destroyed to save him. After taking too much damage, the skeleton was dismissed, but still managed to give a farewell thumbs up. Furious, Herokiller declared that this would be the enemy's end. He used bone bombs to approach under the cover of smoke, but the attacks had little effect. He kept pressing forward, but the Spirit Knight remained standing and continued advancing. Even though he was surprised, Herokiller explained that he already knew Spirit-type monsters take little or no damage from magic. That is why he had mixed physical bone fragments into his bombs. When he used his ultimate summon, the fragments transformed into complete skeletons that appeared and restrained the Spirit Knight. That gave Herokiller the chance to decapitate him once and for all. The victory was final. Herokiller received a reward of 455,000 gold, the title of Chivalrous Spirit, a fragment of the Spirit Knight's armor, and enough experience to level up. At that moment, he remembered the time he had tried to face a Spirit Knight together with his friends, but they ended up defeated and blamed him, saying they would never be able to defeat such an enemy. This time, however, Khan had won alone. The new summoned skeleton gave him another thumbs up, and Herokiller acknowledged that things were very different from back then. He praised his little bone guys, who were touched by their master's recognition. Even so, he noticed he could not leave the dungeon, and wondered if there was another hidden boss. But in truth, it was a reward room that appeared with an extremely low chance. Herokiller thanked all the gods, Jesus, Buddha, anyone who might be listening, and got excited to claim his reward. However, when he opened the chest, all he found was an old, worn-out book containing research records records on an ancient power. He knew that item was related to the main quest, but he had already read that same book so many times in his past life that he had memorized every word. Frustrated, he wondered why he had received something so useless. That was when his eyes caught another book, much flashier, revealing that maybe that story was not over yet. Back in Purong Forest, Herokiller commented that he should have leveled up enough and thought it was time to return to the main quest. He then called his little bone guys, who were now all equipped with armor. Mage had his hood and robe, and the whole group looked excited. Herokiller did not blame them. After all, no one would expect to find such a valuable book in the reward room. The item granted an ability called Armament, which gave him the power to equip his summons with real gear. That meant he could now upgrade his skeletons independently of his own level. Of course, it would cost a fortune, since buying weapons and armor was not cheap, but Herokiller thought it would be worth it. However, while he was thinking about how to best take advantage of his new perk, three suspicious figures approached. One of them recognized Herokiller as the famous Mask of Ho-Ho. They introduced themselves as men who live for romance and die for romance. They were the Romantic Outlaws, a group made up of extremely muscular guys with neatly styled hair and impeccable mustaches. Herokiller, seeing that strange scene, thought it had to be a joke because there were only weirdos in that game. He simply turned around and tried to leave, but the romantic leader stopped him, saying it would not be that easy. According to him, he already expected such a reaction from someone as talented as Herokiller, but he would not give up. Herokiller was clearly losing his patience as the three kept following him like a bunch of creeps. He tried to ignore them, but the leader insisted, saying Herokiller had not answered yet. He politely asked him to join the Romantics. Herokiller firmly replied that he would never be part of that. That was when the three revealed the real reason they had approached him. They were from the R2 family and were trying to train up to level 100 in Purong Forest, but the monsters in the area were way too strong for them. None of them could hunt anything there, and that was why they were looking for more members to strengthen the team. The problem was that no one wanted to join them. Herokiller thought ironically that it was truly shocking news, with zero actual surprise. The group's leader still tried to appeal, asking him to protect romance, but moments later, Herokiller had already beaten the three of them up. He said he was not the protector of any kind of romance, and had no intention of getting involved in that mess. He made it clear that if they followed him again, he would kill them. The three accepted the rejection. The leader lamented, saying that had been their last hope. Another group member suggested that maybe it was time to give up on Purong Forest, but one of them, who had hair just like Josuke from JoJo, mentioned that the Toon family was asking for help. Apparently, they were the group that had once climbed a tree in fear and stayed clinging to it in sheer terror. Now, it seemed they were in trouble again. Meanwhile, later on, Herokiller was facing a large orc from Purong Forest alone, or rather, him and his skeletons. He gave the attack command, and his army advanced in perfect sync. Their combined strike decapitated the creature and tore off all its limbs. Herokiller announced that it had been enemy number 55. He congratulated his little bone guys and concluded that ever since the fight against the Spirit Knight, every other monster felt way too easy. Their movements were extremely predictable, which was great since he was leveling up very quickly. However, his main quest given by Wuang had still not progressed. He needed to find monsters that used armor and equipment, but he had not seen any so far in that forest. He felt like he was not making any real progress, and he could not afford to waste time. Since he knew the major guilds were also investing resources into the main quest, he could not let them catch up. So he thought it might be a good idea to ask the R2 family guys for information. Herokiller would rather die than work with those R2 guys, but suddenly he heard an explosion coming from deep inside Purong Forest. He wondered what kind of monster was causing that much trouble. Then he realized it was probably the kind of monster he had been looking for all along. Meanwhile, the R2 family was trying to rescue the Toon family members, but were surrounded by an army of armored monsters. The R2 captain thought they should not be there at their level, since they were clearly not prepared to deal with that kind of threat. Among the monsters was a leader that seemed even stronger. The captain realized it must be an intelligent monster capable of commanding an army. One of the R2 members used a wall of fire to stop the monsters from advancing, but warned that the injured members of the Toon family were in critical condition and that he would not be able to hold them back for long. Another asked why they did not just run while they still could. The captain agreed that they had almost no chance of winning, but just then he heard the desperate cries for help from the Toon family. Even though he had been rejected twice by them in the past and treated like trash, the R2 family captain decided to help. He said he knew all too well what it felt like to be abandoned, and that was exactly why he had to act. He charged in with his halberd, landing the first strike with precision, though it caused little damage. He was quickly countered and thrown to the ground. Even knowing that it would not be enough, he just wanted to buy a little time. Before he could be crushed by the foot of an armored orc, Herokiller appeared and intercepted the attack. attack. He struck a clean blow to the creature's foot, protecting the captain, and made it very clear that he was not there to help anyone. He said he only showed up because he did not want anyone stealing his farm. Then he called his skeletons to attack. The skeleton army swiftly defeated the armored ogres, and the R2 captain was impressed by the way Herokin's summons moved. It was far beyond the ability of an ordinary necromancer. He wondered who that mask of Heiho really was. After the annihilation of the regular monsters, Herokin said he was already tired of dealing with small fry. He pointed at the ogre commander and asked if he was ready to die, since all his subordinates had already been defeated. The commander, a level 80 helmet ogre, was much larger and more dangerous than the others. The members of the R2 family were frozen in fear at the sight of him. Their captain could hardly believe that Herokin was standing right in front of that creature without even blinking. One of the Toon family members noticed something important. The monster's eyes were tinted red with black, indicating that it was a corrupted monster from the game's main quest. Corrupted monsters were usually 3 times more powerful than normal ones, and even Mask of Haho would have trouble dealing with it. The ogre's first strike was devastating, but Herokin managed to dodge. He admitted the enemy was indeed a bit better than the others. When one of the knights from the Toon family shouted for him not to get any closer, the power of corruption started radiating at full force. The ogre charged like a wild beast, and the knight warned that this was seriously dangerous. Even so, Herokin remained confident. Using the full power of his final form, he shone like a star and pierced through the monster's chest with a lightning-fast attack, killing it in a single blow. Everyone around was stunned. No one could believe what they had just witnessed. After defeating the helmet ogre, Herokin's main quest finally progressed. He obtained a fragment of the ogre's helmet, meeting the quest requirement. Now he just had to return to Wuang to report his progress. However, before that, he wanted to see how the loot distribution would go. There had been 21 armored ogres, plus the boss. The drops were sure to be worth a fortune. In the game, the one who strikes first usually has priority over the loot, but in this case, Herokin had done everything alone. He thought that maybe the most logical thing would have been to wait for everyone to die before stepping in. But when he saw the R2 family captain risking his life to protect the others, his body moved on instinct. The R2 captain deeply thanked the Mask of Heiho, saying that everyone had survived thanks to him. However, he declared that they would not let him leave just like that. Herokin thought, as always, people change when money is involved, but that was not it. In fact, all they wanted was an autograph and a photo with him. The Toon family wanted the same. Herokin, surprised, asked if they did not want to split the drops. The R2 captain pretended not to understand, and then turned to the Toon knight. He replied that yes, of course, it would be fair to divide. But the R2 captain placed a hand on his shoulder and calmly said he was sure he would never do something so dishonorable and ungrateful, right? The knight immediately agreed, saying of course he would give up the items. The captain concluded by saying that this was the most romantic resolution possible. Herokin was still trying to figure out what exactly those guys meant by romance, because it really defied common logic. Later on, Herokin found himself thinking about the R2 family. He remembered the moment when he had been invited by those idiots. But in the end, it was obvious that they were genuinely having fun playing the game. Still, if he allowed himself to get caught up in that, he would never become the best version of himself. He did want to have fun in that game again. He did want moments like that again, but his priority was revenge. He needed to defeat the top 30 guilds in the game by himself. He turned to his skeletons and said they were going to pick up the pace. They would finish that quest quickly and move on to the next. Meanwhile, in another part of the game world, the Thunder Queen easily defeated another large corrupted monster. Her movements were precise and elegant. Soon after, her loyal escorts appeared, Hahui, the Princess of Thunder, and Haichi. Hahui praised her queen, enchanted by her grace in battle. Haichi reported that they had 2 important pieces of news. The first was that 2 of the 30 great guilds had gone to war. Triple Wing Guild and Great Smile Guild were in conflict. It all started when Burke, an officer from Great Smile, got into a fight during an ambush with a member of Triple Wing. Now both guilds were pouring resources and energy into the conflict, but Great Smile seemed to be at a disadvantage. Syl, the Queen of Thunder, criticized the decision to wage war at such a crucial moment in the game, with the main quest still ongoing. She thought it was pure stupidity. She remarked that, at the very least, she hoped one of the guilds would end up destroyed by the war. Then she asked what the second piece of news was. Heichi reported that the Mask of Haho had defeated the Helmet Ogre. In fact, he was already well ahead in the main quest. Instead of getting angry about it, Syl simply smiled. And that smile scared Heichi even more than if she had actually gotten mad. The Queen of Thunder then ordered her team to accelerate as well. She wanted to receive the next mission from Ma Wuang as soon as possible. The Thunder Hunters needed to reach the second chapter of the main quest quickly. Meanwhile, at Bangsu Castle, Ahimri said he was missing his apprentice. When Heichi saw him again, he wondered why he had come back there. Ahimri said he had heard how well he had performed in Ma Wuang's missions and handed over a special item as recognition, the Ring of the Secret Secret Order. It was a unique item that increased all attributes by 77, boosted health and mana regeneration by 20%, and also increased all class-related stats by 22%. Hirkin started to feel uneasy because up until that point, everything had been going way too smoothly. And the moment he returned to speak with Ma Wuang at the hunter's cabin, he confirmed his decision. He said yes, he would join the Secret Order, sir. Before his entry was made official, one of the Order's members warned Hirkin to think carefully. As a member of the Order, he would have to be ready for all kinds of extreme situations. Still, Hirkin answered confidently, saying he was willing to risk his life for the greater good. Deep down, though, he really just wanted to get that rare ring from the Secret Order as soon as possible. At that moment, Ma Wuang sent him back to meet with Ahimri, the same old bastard as always. Hirkin complained, asking why it had to be him. Ma Wuang explained that Ahimri was also part of the Secret Order, and he would be the one to deliver the official emblem. Hirkin already knew that miserable old man would not give him anything for free, and Ahimri, sarcastic as always, told him to say, "Please, little professor." Hirkin, irritated, slammed the table and asked if he thought that would work every single time. In the end, swallowing his anger, he gave in, made a mocking face, did a handstand, and said, "Please, little professor." Ahimri burst out laughing, but in the end, handed over the item. Hirkin finally obtained the Ring of the Secret Order. Now he was officially part of the organization and would receive his next mission, one that was even more dangerous. The next stage would take place in a war zone, one of the riskiest types of areas in the entire game. Later on, Hirkin found himself standing before a battlefield. The location was under siege by an endless horde of monsters charging toward a castle for a set period of time. It was far more dangerous than regular raids. On the other hand, the rewards were proportional to the number of monsters defeated, with great potential for earning a lot of money. The mission was simple. He had to eliminate as many powerful monsters as possible to prove his worth as a new member of the Secret Order. He thought he had been waiting for this moment since he reincarnated, but he had never managed to do it because none of the guilds wanted to go with him. Now, he was excited, but first, he decided to prepare properly. Meanwhile, a mysterious player was following him from a distance, gathering information about him. At the Apollo Guild headquarters, the leader Apollo was punishing his guild members for failing. He complained that those idiots couldn't even capture a rookie and came back empty-handed asking for forgiveness. One of the members tried to justify it by saying that the Thunder Hunters had suddenly appeared and were too powerful. He mentioned that the Thunder Hunters were also trying to recruit the Mask of Heiho. Apollo became even more furious. He said that this guy probably thought the 30 great guilds would protect him, but that would become his greatest weakness. Right after that, Apollo contacted Heavy Ben from the Big Smile office. When he saw the call, Heavy Ben wondered what that fat guy wanted now. Apollo said he needed a favor. He wanted them to teach that Mask of Heiho a lesson. Heavy Ben asked if he was talking about that rookie who had been standing out lately. Apollo confirmed and said that man had the audacity to lay hands on his guild members and made him look like a fool. Heavy Ben, bored, thought here we go again. Being used by that guy, he said he couldn't do anything because the Big Smile Guild was already involved in a war. But Apollo didn't accept the answer. He said that from that moment on, he would cut all sponsorship to Big Smile. He reminded him that it was thanks to this financial support that the guild had become one of the top 30. If they couldn't do such a small favor, then there was no point in continuing to invest in them. Heavy Ben, realizing the risk, changed his tone. He said that now that he had thought about it, that Mask of Heiho really was a problem. Yes, they would teach him a lesson. Heavy Ben hung up on Apollo, saying he would get in touch later. Then he started complaining repeatedly, saying everything was a mess. He knew this would be very costly since they had attacked the Mask of Heiho, which would ruin the guild's image. He couldn't understand why everyone that day seemed to be trying to make his life even harder. That was when the spy from earlier appeared in his office. It was Wuang, who asked if it wouldn't be better to eliminate the Mask of Heiho once and for all. Heavy Ben thought that leaving this task in Wurang's hands, since she was only a guild affiliate and not an official member, might be a good idea. He asked if she thought she could do it, and Wurang replied that she could. She said she owed her life to him, and that, to repay the favor, she would personally ensure the elimination of the Mask of Heiho. Right after that, it was announced that all participants should head to the gates immediately. When everyone arrived, a knight with a giant axe appeared. It was Baigle, captain of Terb, who said that the gates would soon open and everyone needed to be ready. Hirkin, watching from afar, thought that this knight seemed like a very important NPC. Baigle explained that on the other side of the gates, there was a lawless region where monsters roamed freely. The gates would only open again after 144 hours, and participants would be rewarded based on the number of monsters they defeated. In addition, everyone would receive a special quest called Blue Giant. Those who managed to defeat this creature would earn a unique skill. Herkin was impressed, as he knew that kind of skill was extremely rare, almost at the highest possible level. In his past life, he had only seen a book like that a few times. Now they were offering such a reward just like that, for free. It felt like too much. He then realized that everyone around him had eyes full of greed. The group began to think they needed to eliminate any competition, and the strongest among them was the Mask of Heiho. Because of that, he became the new target for everyone. Watching from a distance, Herkin understood that the focus was no longer the blue giant quest, but himself. When the gates opened, he dashed off like a rocket, leaving everyone in the dust. Some considered chasing him on their own, but Wuang appeared and suggested forming a team to capture him. One of the knights mocked her, saying she was just a rookie and had no right to boss anyone around. However, when he pointed his finger at her, Wuang completely destroyed the player's body with one hand, leaving everyone terrified. She then asked if anyone else wanted to challenge her. Faced with the silence, she said it was better that way. She explained that she did not care about the skill book and that her only goal was to kill the Mask of Heiho. She proposed a deal. Whoever obeyed her orders would get the book as a reward. Meanwhile, Herkin was already hiding, watching the group advance in his direction. He realized they had formed an alliance solely to eliminate him and concluded that this would be a big problem. He would already be busy hunting monsters and now had to deal with this new situation as well. With no other choice, he decided it was time to activate his secret plan. Meanwhile, Wuang thought to herself that she was lucky to have gathered so many people. She doubted that the Mask of Heiho could defeat such a large group all at once, but she also started imagining what she would do after beating him. Would she finally become an official member of Big Smile? Would she have her own subordinates? Just thinking about it filled her with enthusiasm as she imagined how wonderful it would be to fulfill that dream. She was the type of woman who loved being served by many men. In fact, she dreamed of turning her own men into furniture, coat racks, chairs, tables. However, she was so distracted by her fantasies that she did not notice the monster horde approaching. Wuang commented that there was no reason to panic, since it looked like just a few creatures. However, one of the knights noticed something was wrong. There were far too many monsters, way more than in a normal horde. Wuang quickly confirmed he was right. That was when she saw the Mask of Heiho himself, riding a golem, appearing ahead of the group. He asked if they really had the nerve to form an alliance just to defeat him, and announced that now they were screwed. Then he started ringing a bell, provoking the monsters even more and drawing their attention. At the same time, his little skeletons formed a small band, putting on a true musical show to attract the creatures toward his enemies. And it worked perfectly. The warriors began to be slaughtered and were begging Wuang for help, complaining that they could not reach the Mask of Heiho because he was too far away and there were too many monsters in the way. She realized, frustrated, that her plans had been completely ruined. They had tried to ambush the Mask of Heiho, but in the end, they had been ambushed by a single man. With no other choice, Wuang ordered the warriors to hold the line as long as they could. She assured them that the horde would soon calm down and that she herself would take care of the Mask of Heiho. She dashed forward alone, jumping from monster head to get closer to Herkin, who was calmly sitting on the golem, but soon had to react to the attack. Wuang challenged Herkin to a direct duel. Herkin could not quite understand who she was. He could not remember her face at all, which he found very strange considering the hatred she showed. He thought it was weird for someone he had never seen before to want to kill him so badly. Wuang, on the other hand, knew she could not reveal her connection to Heavyben from Big Smile, so she lied, saying she was just another competitor interested in the unique skill book. Herkin immediately suspected her. He knew it was a lie and attacked, crossing his sword with her daggers. Her expression made it clear that she did not care about that book at all. She counterattacked with fast dagger strikes, forcing Herkin to dodge. Even so, he managed to hit her with a bone bomb. Despite that, she shook off the impact with agility, which impressed Herkin. He asked what group she was from, but she only replied with a provocation, telling him to guess if he was so curious. Wuang then activated her slot-on transformation, which made Herkin realize she was really taking the fight seriously. He reflected that if he killed her now, he would never find out where she came from. But at the same time, he knew she was not an opponent he could take lightly. He decided to take the battle seriously too. Wuang declared that she would now show her true power. Meanwhile, Herkin's little skeletons just watched the scene while eating popcorn. Curious, Wuang asked who they were, and Herkin replied that they were his skeletons, but they would not interfere in the fight. When she asked why, he explained that it was a one-on-one duel, and there was no reason to summon creatures during a direct battle. That surprised Wuang, who until then thought he was superficial and frivolous, but now saw a serious side to him. Still, she thought maybe that seriousness would be the reason for his defeat. She dashed forward at full speed, but was surprised to see her attack blocked. Herkin admitted that she was different from before. In response, she increased her speed even more and managed to land a hit on his face, causing blood to drip down. He was shocked by the direct hit. Wuang did not stop there and continued slashing with her daggers, leaving Herkin's body completely bloodied. Wuang commented that, in fact, Herkin Herokiller even looked kind of cute in that position. He had fallen just right to serve as a chair for her. It was a shame he had to die in Heavyben's name, but the moment she said that and moved in to strike, one of his skeletons tripped her. Herokiller then asked if she had really mentioned Heavyben and confirmed she was from the Big Smile Guild. He then struck her on the head with his sword, knocking her unconscious, and tied her to a post. He took the chance to ask why Big Smile was after him. Wuang, annoyed, said he would not learn anything from her and that he would never get a truthful answer. Still, Herokiller asked if her name was Cho Wuang and if she was a subordinate of Heavyben, affiliated with Big Smile. She denied it, but he said she was a terrible liar. When she asked how he knew, Herokiller answered in his thoughts that it was simple. Before his regression, Wuang had been one of Heavyben's most well-known subordinates. He kept pressing her to know why they were after him, since, as far as he could remember, he had never provoked anyone. Wuang, now even more irritated, told him to just kill her already, because she could not take the humiliation any longer. But Herokiller replied that he would not do that, because it would be a waste to kill someone like her. Then he looked at the clock and commented that the blue giant had finally appeared. He said he was leaving, but warned that if there was another trick, then yes, he would kill her. Watching from a distance, Wuang alternated between confusion and fascination. At first, she thought he was an idiot. Then she was impressed by his seriousness. After that, she was surprised by something sweet he said. She began to wonder if he was bipolar and realized she had fallen hopelessly in love with him. Soon after, she sent a message to Heavyben, informing him that she had failed to eliminate the Mask of Heiho. Heavyben replied, saying it was all right and that she should rest. However, as soon as the call ended, he became furious, feeling betrayed for having trusted her. Still, he tried to stay positive, since Apollo didn't know anything yet. But it didn't take long before Apollo called, asking if he still had not defeated the Mask of Heiho. He warned that soon everyone would know that Big Smile, one of the top 30 guilds, had been defeated by him. He wanted to know if Heavyben was really going to let that happen. Consumed by rage, Heavyben blamed everything on the Mask of Roy, calling him a bastard. Once again, Herokiller felt an annoying pain in his ear and wondered why people were always talking about him. After getting the information he needed from Wuang, he went straight to face the blue giant, without any joy on his face. After a long battle, Herokiller was completely battered, exhausted, and covered in wounds, but he finally managed to defeat the blue giant, which was level 85. However, he wondered why that monster had HP similar to a level 100 enemy. He had not expected such a long fight, which lasted about 30 minutes. In the end, he even thought he should thank Wuang for the chaos she caused, since the others ended up killing each other because of that foolish plan to capture him. Reflecting on what he had heard, he concluded that Big Smile was after him, but he still did not know exactly why this time. Before his regression, the sudden success of the Heiho Mask Guild had drawn the attention of the 30 great guilds, who joined forces to destroy them. At the center of all that persecution was Che Sol Yeon, also known as Sil, the Queen of Thunder. Maybe she was scheming something again in this new life. Even so, Herokiller felt like there was still a missing piece. He decided it was not worth overthinking. He knew he was not good with strategies, but he was great in combat. He kept his mindset simple. Whoever gets in his way, dies. There were still 138 hours left in the challenge, and now he would start farming for real. After that time passed, the other participants left the place completely destroyed, both physically and emotionally. They complained among themselves that they should have never messed with Heiho Mask, as it had been a nightmare. In the end, Heiho Mask himself walked past them calmly, full of money, while the others argued and blamed each other. With a mocking tone, he told them not to fight and asked why they had such gloomy faces. He commented that it surely was not because they had been fooled like idiots and returned without a single coin, right? They were furious at the provocation, but Herokiller only smiled inside. He thought that was pure and fair karma. Meanwhile, Wuang watched Herokiller from a distance and thought that next time she would capture him and make him her possession. At that moment, Beagle was announcing the top contributor to the recent mission, the Necromancer Herokiller. He called him to his office and later commented that Herokiller's achievements had been impressive. He had not only defeated most of the monsters, but also conquered the powerful blue giant. Beagle explained that strange creatures were appearing more frequently, including blue-skinned monsters wrapped in a peculiar icy energy, like the giant that had just been defeated. He suspected that these creatures were coming from the icy mountain visible in the distance. However, Herokiller was not paying much attention, as he already knew the Frozen Kingdom map was located beyond that mountain. But when Beagle mentioned the reward, Herokiller finally focused. Beagle commented that he was predictable, but said that before any prize, Herokiller should receive a letter from his master. The message said he should go to the Urgal Mountains, where a new phase linked to a secret organization would begin. There, he was to find a blacksmith named Ulf and listen to instructions for his next mission. Herokiller thought the Urgal Mountains were full of very powerful monsters, which explained why he had been sent on an intermediate mission before being directed there. Bagel then handed him the promised reward, a unique skill book. He emphasized that only Hirkan had received it and asked him to treat it with great care. But Hirkan could not hold back. He literally kissed the book and opened it right away, eager for a powerful skill. After a system roll, a question appeared asking if he wanted the skill called Clay Play. He was confused by the strange name and wondered what that was. Meanwhile, Syl was not doing well at all. In a fit of rage, she used such a powerful strike that she nearly split the forest in half. She was furious that someone had stolen her main quest, the one her guild had been searching for so long. Irritated, she shouted, asking who the bastards were that had done it. Heichi replied that they were not members of any of the 30 great guilds. In fact, they seemed like unknowns and not very high level. Syl ordered them to capture anyone who resembled the invaders and issued a warning for no one to approach the boss until it regenerated. She swore she would kill whoever dared to steal her prey. Elsewhere, the knight who had taken part in the mission commented that they had taken the target from the Thunder Hunters Guild. He said the mission had been dangerous, and he nearly died trying. Mikkel explained that they had no other choice, because the Thunder Hunters were moving much faster than expected. The knight asked if next time the target would be a Hydra, and whether he would have to kill everyone. Mikkel told him to calm down, because if their identities were revealed, it would be a huge problem. Single from the Hands Guild agreed. He said their goal was to maintain the balance of that world and rid it of darkness. That was the purpose of the HS Guild. Then, all the members were introduced. There was the knight and lancer Richard, the informant Michael, the strange weaver with a monster head, and finally Momo, who asked about the masked man wearing the Ha-Ho mask. She wanted to know if it was Single's failure that had allowed that man to advance so quickly in the main quest. Single replied that for now, their goal was to stop the progress of the 30 great guilds, and he would deal with that boy later. Mikkel interrupted, saying it was time to stop talking and move on to the next mission. So they all departed together. Later on, Hirkan was analyzing his new skill called Clay Play, or Clay Creation. With F proficiency, he could now transform clay into monsters using items dropped by defeated enemies. The more Hirkan used the skill, the stronger the creatures he could create would become. The materials were consumed during the process. He realized he could basically turn a golem into a different kind of monster, like a flying golem or even a giant one for battle. That was something truly exciting. To test it, Hirkan used the blue giant's tooth on his golem. After a flash of light and a burst of energy, the golem turned into a tiny creature with an exaggeratedly large head, resembling the giant. The system notified him that for now the skill's rank was still low, so it would only have 50% effectiveness. Upon seeing that, Hirkan thought the game was pure madness. Later, in the Urgel village, he was irritated with himself. He admitted that it was his own fault for getting his hopes up too high. After all, nothing ever came easy for him. Everything was always difficult. Now he would have to slowly level up his new skill. But for now, he decided to focus on the main quest. His goal was to find a blacksmith named Ulf, a very famous NPC from the Secret Order. He was known for forging epic items with incredible attributes, but could only be found through the main quest. In his past life, Hirkan had never had the chance to meet him in person. Now, maybe this was his opportunity to get a powerful weapon. When he arrived at the forge, he noticed the place was dark, dirty, and completely empty. Suddenly, he was hit by an attack from Ulf himself, who threw him back and caused a massive HP loss. He was confused, wondering who would attack him NPC area. But then Ulf appeared and asked if that was all he had. He said newbies these days were all weak, and that back in his time, they were much stronger. Hirkan had no idea why the blacksmith attacked him. Ulf explained that it was a test for beginners in the order. Hirkan thought it was absurd to be attacked out of nowhere as part of a test. But even so, he received the title First to Speak with Ulf, which increased his class-related attributes by 25. Since he was also the first to survive the blacksmith, he got an additional 25% HP bonus. He was thrilled to have earned 2 titles so quickly. Ulf then asked if he was angry about the attack, saying that rookies these days had no patience. Hirkan replied that he was not angry and was willing to do whatever was needed, even clean or lick his boots if Ulf wanted. The blacksmith told him to stop, called him weird, and threw a bag in his face, ordering him to deliver it to the Baheim forest and never show up there again. Hirkan, however, did not mind being treated that way. He knew Ulf could grant many valuable titles. Now he had received a new mission called Ulf's Request. His task was to take the bag to the inhabitants of Baheim Forest, whom he knew were elves. The problem was that elves were generally hostile toward humans. They lived in hiding and moved constantly, which made them hard to find. In his past life, players had created entire maps just to locate elves, but now he was not sure if such a map existed. With no better option, he went straight to the city of Urgel, announcing that he was willing to pay for information. He said he was buying information about the the forest and, depending on the details, could pay up to 100,000. Since he was known there as Ha-Ho Mask, he quickly drew attention. Herokiller, observing everything, found the situation a bit embarrassing, but understood it was the best he could do. Posting publicly about it would attract the great guilds, so he preferred to act discreetly, even if it felt shameful. At that moment, an extremely powerful warrior appeared, with footsteps so heavy they made the ground shake. On his back, he carried a mountain lion larger than anything ever seen in that square. The warrior approached and asked if Herokiller was the Ha-Ho Mask. Herokiller immediately recognized the man. It was Pitbull Singh, one of the strongest players in the game, ranked among the top 100. The people around were in shock. They whispered that he might be there to challenge the Ha-Ho Mask. Herokiller remembered facing that player in his previous life and managing to defeat him, but he knew he was a formidable opponent. He was not sure if he could win again. The crowd started placing bets, and someone warned that the name Pitbull was not for nothing. He was known for defeating his enemies in cruel and merciless ways. According to the crowd, Ha-Ho Mask had no chance. Many claimed he would be crushed. That was when Herokiller shouted for everyone to shut up, saying he could hear everything from where he stood. But ignoring the chatter, Pitbull Singh approached and said he could reveal everything he knew about Baheim Forest. Herokiller asked what the price was for that information, and Pitbull replied that the price was being able to confess his love. The crowd was confused and began commenting, wondering if he was really confessing his love for the Ha-Ho Mask. Later, already in the forest, Herokiller was wondering what exactly had happened. Pitbull told him to control his breathing. Nervous, Herokiller said it was all his fault, as the public confession had caused total chaos. They had to escape to the forest to flee the crowd. He also declared that he did not like men and would have to reject the confession. Pitbull, not understanding, asked what he was talking about and called him weird. He said he had never confessed anything. Then he explained the real reason he was there. Months ago, while hunting in that forest, he had encountered an incredibly beautiful elf. Without saying a word, she fled as if terrified. Since then, he had never been able to find her again. He spent months waiting in the same spot and gathered information from local NPCs. Some residents said they had seen an elf, but he was never able to track her down. He was about to give up when he saw Herokiller looking for information and decided to ask for his help. Herokiller realized that this was why Pitbull had spoken in such a strange way. He thought it would have been easier if he had just explained the situation from the start, instead of saying he was making a love confession. But despite the confusion, Pitbull was the only one with a clue that could help him complete his mission. So, Herokiller asked him to take him to the place where the elf had first appeared. After a while, they arrived at a waterfall. Pitbull explained that, according to the locals, elves usually appeared in two places: beyond waterfall and the space under the great oak tree. Already near the edge of the village, Herokiller said that was enough and asked if monsters appeared there too. Pitbull confirmed, saying large monsters often showed up. Herokiller thought that was great, because they could take the opportunity to hunt. Soon, a monster appeared, a bark-skinned serpent, level 90. Pitbull stepped forward, but Herokiller said he would handle it. Pitbull warned him that the creature's level was high and it would not be easy, but Herokiller replied confidently, reminding him who he was dealing with. However, as soon as he attacked, he was immediately knocked down by the serpent and rolled across the ground like a piece of trash. Pitbull asked if he was okay, and Herokiller started crying, saying it hurt a lot and he was going to die. Pitbull, confused, asked what he was doing. Just as the serpent prepared to devour him, an explosive shot saved his life. The truth was that Herokiller had done it on purpose. He knew that NPCs known as residents only reacted when someone was in mortal danger. These residents were actually elves, and just as he expected, 3 elven archers appeared at that moment, saving his life. Pitbull Singh asked if Herokiller had planned that all along. Herokiller replied that there was a chance, and in the end, the elves really had shown up. Then he tried to stay calm and spoke politely to them. He said that he was Herokiller, sent by the blacksmith Ulf, and that he had a very important mission. For that reason, he would appreciate being invited to visit their village. But the archer who seemed to lead the group quickly pointed an arrow at his face, saying that, in other words, they had been deceived. Another archer said that humans could not be trusted. She claimed humans were liars, disgusting, and greedy. Herokiller felt offended by that, but he did not want to resort to violence. He was torn, unsure of what to do. That was when Pitbull knelt before them and apologized for deceiving the elves. He said he just needed to see her one more time. Looking directly at the archer in the middle, he said that they had met only once in that forest, and since then he had fallen in love at first sight. He asked for a chance to get to know her better. Herokiller, surprised, thought that behavior was absurd and could not understand what he was doing. But to his shock, the elf actually liked the gesture. The other elves whispered whether Selena had charmed that human, and without another word they left, taking Pitbull with them and leaving Herokiller completely alone. Frustrated, he muttered that this game was garbage. Although he had completed the mission of locating the elves, Herokiller had not been able to deliver the bag as instructed. Still, he calmly followed Pitbull. On the way, he kept asking himself if the game was supposed to be an RPG or a dating simulator, and why none of the elves liked him. Pitbull, still smiling, told the Heiho mask that he felt like he was about to die of happiness. Herokiller, on the other hand, complained that they had almost died because of the elves, and told him not to walk around with that smug grin just because his confession had been accepted. He said it didn't matter how pretty the elf was. She could still be crazy. He knew that from personal experience. But Pitbull explained that it wasn't just her beauty he admired. For him, elves represented the ultimate symbol of fantasy. Herokiller immediately thought the guy was a pervert, but Pitbull clarified that wasn't the case. He explained that ever since he was a kid, he had played fantasy games, read comics, and books in the genre. He had always been passionate about imaginary worlds, especially dark elves, who to him were the pinnacle of fantasy. He dreamed of living adventures in another world, alongside battle companions. Herokiller wondered why he was hearing this whole life story and what it had to do with the elf. Pitbull then asked if Herokiller did not feel the same. Wasn't that why he played the game? For fun. Because of that same feeling? But Herokiller replied coldly that he did not. He said he did not have that kind of silly dream. His only goal was to become the most powerful in the game and crush anyone who dared to underestimate him. He wanted to see their faces humiliated. That was his true dream. Pitbull then asked if, by doing that, he wouldn't become just like those who crushed him in the past. Herokiller answered yes, and that it did not matter. He said the strong devour the weak. That is the world. As he spoke, he was already moving toward Pitbull with a punch, knocking him to the ground. He asked what he knew about his life. He said that talk of dreams and happiness never reached people like him. He had always fought to survive, had been betrayed and stepped on like an insect. He was tired of that kind of talk. At that moment, Herokiller revealed his real face to Pitbull. But before things could escalate, the elves ordered them to stop the little fight because they had already arrived at Ahimri village. Selena showed the great ancient tree, explaining that it was the heart of the village. Herokiller, still in a bad mood, told them to go ahead, that he would follow them later. Selena then asked Pitbull if he had fought with his companion, but he remained silent. Later, Herokiller made his way to the place where he was supposed to meet the Elder on behalf of Lord Ulf. He thought he had lost control a bit during that argument, but decided to leave it behind. Now his only priority was to focus on completing the main quest. The Elf Elder Dra, leader of the elves, appeared before Herokiller and remarked that the delivery must have been an order from the secret order, right? Herokiller nodded and immediately handed over the bag, completing the quest. When Dra opened the package and took the item out, he realized it was a special tiara, an epic item known as the Tiara of Purification, capable of removing all negative status effects and debuffs. At that moment, Herokiller understood why they had not let him open the bag before. He also realized that the next quest would probably involve purifying corrupted elves, discovering who was behind it all, and finally unlocking the second main mission. The reward, of course, would be the tiara itself, but to his surprise, Dra said he could already leave. Herokiller, confused, asked if he had gone all the way there just to make a delivery. He wanted to know if there was no follow-up quest. Dra replied there was not. He explained that at the moment, Herokiller was still too weak for that kind of task. That was when Herokiller realized he had hit a level restriction, just like the time he had to abandon a mission for being under-leveled. But this time he swore it would be different. He promised to return as soon as he completed his training. Determined, he returned to the forest and started hunting monsters non-stop. He knew the great guilds, especially the Thunder Hunters, were getting closer to the main quest. He could not afford to waste any more time. Despite the complications, he decided he would keep hunting monsters until he reached level 100. During the battles, Herokiller remembered Pitbull Singh's words about him becoming just like the ones who had crushed him in the past. That only made him angrier. He continued to slaughter enemies in a rage until he was so exhausted that he dropped his sword to the ground and began taking hits directly from the monsters. Meanwhile, Pitbull was alone with Selena and explained everything that had happened between him and Herokiller. He admitted he had probably said too much. Selena calmly asked why he simply did not go apologize. She said maybe it was not as hard as he thought. After all, they had not even really become true friends. Just as Herokiller, now vulnerable, was being attacked by a monster, Pitbull appeared to save him. He declared that he had come to apologize to his friend, but Herokiller, still resentful, asked what his problem was. He said he thought he could just show up and strike up a conversation like nothing had happened, then ordered his skeletons to surround Pitbull. The blades were already ready to slice his neck, but Herokiller stopped the army when he heard the apology. Pitbull admitted he had interfered in something that was none of his business. He repeated his apology sincerely. Herokiller then said that if he truly meant it, he should help with the hunt. Pitbull asked if that meant he was forgiven. Herokiller replied that if he said another word like that, he he would kick him so hard he would fly, so it was best not to make him regret it. Pipple smiled and asked if apologies like that were expensive. But before the conversation could continue, more monsters appeared, and the two fought side by side, defeating the creatures and gaining many levels. That was when Hyrkin finally reached level 100. Pipple acknowledged that his training plan had been absolutely insane. Hyrkin said he had slept less than 3 hours a day for 3 days straight. Exhausted but satisfied, he declared he was finally ready. Pipple replied that it was time to move on. Hyrkin thought that he could finally accept the level 100 quest. He knew he would not have made it this far without that help. He just did not know how to say it properly. Pipple, noticing, told him not to be so embarrassed. He said it was kind of gay, and without giving Hyrkin a chance to respond, simply logged out of the game. Hyrkin was furious because he was just about to thank him properly. He thought it was really stupid of him to log out like that, right when he was about to offer the main quest as a gesture of goodwill. Later, Hyrkin returned to Elder Dra, who noticed he had become much stronger. Now Dra was finally willing to place more trust in him. He said that, because of that, he would finally hand over the tiara of purification. He just asked if Hyrkin was listening carefully. Hyrkin was determined to kill that bastard when he saw him again. He had no doubt about it. Shortly after, he received the tiara of purification, along with the mission related to the corrupted elf. The moment he held the tiara, the item's effect activated, and he was extremely happy, taken by a sense of relief. Dra noticed this and decided to leave the mission in Hyrkin's hands, believing he was the right person to deal with it. Han also accepted the challenge and asked what the next destination would be. But Dra admitted that he actually didn't know. He said that if he knew, he would have already built an elevator straight to it. Even without a clear direction, he believed Han could handle it. Hyrkin, frustrated, realized he hadn't even received a hint. The map was gigantic, and he had no idea how he would find a corrupted elf that spawned randomly around the world. He thought he had solved one problem, but others began to appear soon after. He knew he would have to exchange information with others again, but public exchanges were dangerous for him. If he revealed that he was doing the main quest, everyone would swarm him like a horde of zombies. Even so, he already had a plan. He knew the corrupted elf was responsible for creating monster armies using his high magical power, so he was probably in areas with a strong monster presence. With that deduction, Hyrkin decided to start offering money in exchange for information about good farming locations. That way, people wouldn't suspect his real intention and would bring useful information in exchange for his gold. Sooner or later, he would find the elf. He believed he was a genius for coming up with that plan. He was sure it would work. That was when someone approached and asked if he was interested in information about monsters. Hyrkin hadn't noticed the approach, and to his surprise, it was Shev, the same one who had been earlier at the Red Bull's base. Right after, Yell came up to Shev and asked if he remembered that anonymous informant who had given the tip about the location of the corrupted count. A new message had arrived from the same informant. He said he was buying information about newly appeared monsters, but Shev quickly realized that was just a distraction. He understood the real target of the informant was something much more important. Yell, upon hearing this, found the situation interesting. She said it sounded like a delicious opportunity, because they might end up monopolizing all the information. Shev agreed and said that soon he would return to that area and grab whatever he could. Hyrkin was surprised to see Shev there and asked what he was doing in that place. When he had prepared his trap, Hyrkin only expected to attract a few small targets, but in the end, he had caught a real shark. He thought the whole situation was very suspicious, especially because Shev was silent. He knew Shev was trying to hide something. Before he could think about escaping, Shev came closer and asked directly if he was thinking about running away. That was when Hyrkin ordered the skeletons to stop attacking, as they were already holding their swords to Shev's neck. The boss acknowledged that it had been a smart move. If the attack had continued, he would already be dead. Hyrkin thought it was humiliating, but admitted it was true. Shev then demanded an answer. He commented that Hyrkin's physical abilities were far beyond what was expected for a rookie, and that he had information that not even the major guilds knew. That was why he wanted to know who the hell he was. Hyrkin, trying to escape the situation, started shouting for help, pretending to be desperate. He said he was just a rookie from the defense class, and that man was trying to kill him. But Shev remained silent, which made Hyrkin wonder if he had felt sorry or just become even more suspicious. Shev commented that it was probably a misunderstanding and concluded that, in that case, Hyrkin wasn't the informant they were looking for. Hyrkin immediately agreed, saying yes, it was definitely a misunderstanding. Then, as if to provoke him, Shev said he was thinking of paying $5 billion to the real informant, plus bonuses, incentives, and a generous salary. He said it was really a shame that Hyrkin wasn't him. That was when Hyrkin tried to change his mind. He said he had always dreamed of joining the Red Bulls, but quickly quickly thought better. He thought it was wrong to go around buying people with money, although he was visibly tempted, drooling at the thought of that amount. Shev then directly asked what he thought about the deal. With this agreement, Herokiller would join the Red Bulls Guild under the code name Mask of Haho. Herokiller gave a vague answer, as if he were about to accept. However, Shev quickly warned that if he refused, he could very well become his rival. Without hesitation, Shev drew his magma sword and pressed it against Herokill's neck, who refused the offer. He said he would not borrow power from anyone and would become the strongest on his own, even if it meant dying right there. He warned that Shev would be one of the first to fall. But Shev simply ignored him, and sitting on the cliff, commented about the Red Lake. He said the information his guild had confirmed was true, and that there had been a sudden increase in monster activity in that area. Herokiller was confused by that sudden change of subject. He wanted to know why Shev was telling him that, now that they were supposed to be rivals. Shev replied that he would never consider someone like him a rival. To him, Herokiller was still just a kid. The Red Bulls Guild was the most powerful and would never surrender to anyone. However, Shev admitted he admired the spirit of the Mask of Haho because he fought alone. Even so, he made it clear that this did not make him special and that he should not think he was the last cookie in the jar. With that, he stood up and left, leaving Herokiller humiliated. Before leaving, Herokiller tried to strike back by revealing something about the Mountain of Salt. He said that if the Red Bulls were really progressing that far in the main quest, then they had probably already reached that place. He asked if Shev had discovered it, trying to make it seem like he had caught him off guard. He called him a clueless brat, trying to turn the situation around. But Shev just gave a mocking laugh, saying it was no wonder Herokiller was always called an idiot. After that, Herokiller left the place furious, and Shev reported that the recruitment had failed. It seemed that the greed for golden eggs had been pushed too far, and Shev ended up giving up on the idea. Even so, he became even more curious about the Mask of Haho, wondering how far that guy could go. He was fine with everything, but Yell became extremely angry and started yelling at Shev, calling him useless. Shev accepted the scolding without complaining. Later, at the Red Lake, Herokiller was still very angry, grumbling to himself while staring at that cursed place. The little skeletons, on the other hand, were playing with the red water and finding it very amusing. Herokiller told them to focus, saying there was nothing fun about a lake with red water. Still, he remembered the times when he used to play for fun, when his friends would splash that same red water in his face. As always, Rick would get furious about it too. Thinking back, the place actually felt kind of familiar. He told the skeletons to stop playing and get into formation immediately. However, a group of players approached. Herokiller suspected an ambush and placed his skeletons in the front line. When he prepared to attack, he was surprised to see all the players kneel before him, bowing to the Mask of Haho and asking for help. After they explained the situation, Herokiller was confused and wanted to confirm. He asked if they were saying there was a corrupted gray cockatrice in that area, a giant monster, and that they could not defeat it, which was why they were asking for his help. The group said they were part of the second division of the Golden Brothers Guild, a guild ranked among the top 30, but they were just the secondary branch. They were, in practice, children abandoned by the main guild. Herokiller thought it was all too long and asked for a summary in 3 sentences. That was when they explained it directly. If they failed to hunt the monster, they would be expelled from the guild. They begged desperately for his help. They offered gold, begged repeatedly, and asked if he would accept 20,000 gold coins. Herokiller remembered he still had to deal with the corrupted elf afterward, but thought that if he got the payment and all the rewards, he could kill the monster. He accepted under one condition. He wanted the payment in advance. The group thanked him many times, excitedly, but something about their behavior felt suspicious. The truth was that the same group had once been a squad of slaves from the Apollo Guild, forced to work in caves mining crystals. One day, they were given a chance by Apollo to do something more. They had to kill the Mask of Haho. It was an almost impossible mission, but in return, they would receive cutting-edge equipment. It did not matter whether it was through a direct attack or an ambush, as long as he died. If they failed, they would return to the caves, whipped forever. That was why they were there now, waiting for the right moment to attack Herokiller when his guard was down. But at that exact moment, the massive level 120 corrupted cockatrice appeared, and all Herokiller said when he saw it was that the creature made an infernal noise. The bald one in the group warned that, on his signal, everyone would attack. However, Herokiller was already aware of the ambush and said he would break the monster's armor so they could hit it a bit afterward. Then he activated his muscle modification, making his body more aerodynamic, and rushed forward like a rocket. The group warned that the cockatrice was a long-range monster. Even so, when the creature fired its feathers, Herokiller dodged all of them. He noticed the monster was slower than he remembered and attacked directly at the neck armor. After that, he kept landing several blows on the cockatrice's shell, destroying it all in less than a second. The group was shocked to see how easily he had ripped off the armor. Herokiller commented that now only the creature's helmet remained, but at that moment the group turned against him. They launched a sequence of coordinated attacks with all types of magic. When the fight ended, and only the cockatrice remained visible, the group believed Herokiller had finally died. To them, that was freedom. They thought they would no longer be anyone's slaves. But Herokiller was more alive than ever. He had already been suspicious of the situation from the beginning. The group claimed to be poor, but wore high-end equipment and had placed him, a necromancer, right on the front line. Luckily, Herokiller had prepared in advance. He used skin stitching to add 388 armor, a false heart that gave him 120 hit points, and activated boiling blood to increase regeneration. In the end, he emerged completely unharmed from the attack. He made it clear he did not care whether they were slaves or anything else. They would all die there. Then he summoned the final form of his skeleton army and asked if they still intended to resist. Even the cockatrice was now on his side. Herokiller commented ironically that the group should have realized how screwed they were. It was better to accept death. But at that moment, the system notified him that the corrupted elf had appeared nearby. In fact, she had been hiding the entire time, watching the situation, and ran off as soon as she saw that Herokiller was still alive. Now he had 3 minutes to capture her. Before leaving, Herokiller gave an order to the slave brothers. They were to keep the skeletons and the cockatrice busy until he returned. He warned that if they tried to escape, their deaths would be extremely painful. So Herokiller ran after the corrupted elf. She was already within his line of sight, and he thought it was only a matter of time before he caught her. If he did, he would secure first place in the game's main quest. However, no matter how close he got, he could not grab her. He even tried throwing a skeleton bomb, but it did not work. Time was running out. Only a few seconds remained. 6, 5, 4. On the next attempt, he threw another bomb. The elf dodged, but he used the explosion as a boost, stepping on it to launch himself into the air and catch her with a jump. When he finally grabbed the elf by the neck, she immediately spat blood. She had bitten her own tongue hard, trying to kill herself before he could complete the mission. Herokiller panicked and shouted that she could not die there. He quickly placed the tiara of purification on her head, hoping there was still time. He begged for it to work somehow. And in the next moment, even while dying, the elf gave him one last thing before her body completely shut down. Even with the elf's death, the mission was completed. Herokiller took a deep breath, relieved, and said that at least the mission was done, but he could not avoid frustration. If she was going to die in the end, what was the point of all that? That was when he saw a little piece of paper and became completely outraged. It all seemed like a big sick joke, another twisted game of that world. Meanwhile, the slaves were still trying to fight the cockatrice, which hardly seemed to take any damage. The skeletons summoned by Herokiller were distracted, playing in the red lake as if it were a pool, even tossing a skull around like volleyball. But everything changed when Herokiller reappeared with his golem, who smashed the chicken monster with brutal force. The slaves, desperate, said they had been waiting for him and begged for forgiveness. They pleaded to be spared. After being easily defeated, one of them admitted they were from the Apollo Guild. They had no other choice because they were full of debts, and that mission seemed like their only way out. Herokiller reflected. These guilds were hiring anyone to try to kill him. On top of that, they were using top-tier equipment, things that were hard to obtain. They were clearly investing heavily to eliminate him. He remembered that, last time, he was chased by an assassin from the Big Smile. Maybe the two guilds were allied. If that was the case, he would need to gather more information. So he ordered all the enemies to get up. They thought they had been forgiven, but they were wrong. Herokiller told them to hand over everything they had and declared that, from that moment on, each of them owed him 1 million. The group, terrified, concluded that Herokiller was even worse than Apollo. Meanwhile, at the Big Smile headquarters, Heavy Ben was relaxing, enjoying a facial treatment with a cucumber mask. He was totally calm until a messenger arrived with urgent news. The Red Bulls had declared war against them. Heavy Ben was confused and wanted to know why. The messenger explained that it was some kind of retaliation for them having attacked the Mask of Roy. Heavy Ben grew worried and wondered if the Mask of Haho had any connection to the Red Bulls. He thought it was all a misunderstanding and asked to schedule a diplomatic conversation with the rival group's leader. But before he could do anything, another messenger arrived with more urgent information. The high-level items he had recently lent to Apollo were now being found at auction. Heavy Ben, in disbelief, asked who the seller was. The messenger replied that it was the Mask of Roy, sir. Then, overwhelmed with rage, Heavy Ben cursed the traitor once again. Back in the elven forest, Herokiller was not allowed to keep the tiara of purification, but he received a new mission. He had to discover the secret hidden in the letter the elf had handed over before dying. The riddle said, "A place watched by eagles under skies covered in blue clouds, where a village hides beneath them." Herokiller was already annoyed, and this riddle only made things worse. He wondered if it was a clue or a cursed poem. Either way, he knew he would need to find someone more experienced than him to interpret it. So he went to Pitbull, who was surrounded by several cute and beautiful elf girls. When Pitbull saw Hirokon approaching, he sarcastically asked what brought his friend to that paradise. But Hirokon, furious, did not answer and immediately charged at him with the intention of killing him. Later, the elf girls were literally fighting over who would feed Pitbull. One of them showed jealousy and asked if the other was his favorite. He replied with a smile that all of them were his favorites. Hirokon, watching the scene, was furious and wondered what was wrong with that guy. He wanted to understand why Pitbull was just having fun with the elves instead of completing missions. Pitbull explained that he had stayed in the village for a long time and ended up earning their trust. In fact, he had simply tried to do his best. Hirokon found the whole thing very suspicious and asked if it was some kind of hidden quest. The moment he got closer, several elves pointed their bows at him, but Pitbull asked them to calm down, saying everything was fine and that there was no need for violence. Then he walked up to one of the elves and gently touched her lips with his hand, while the others sighed in delight. Hirokon, even more irritated, thought about how he was risking his life in difficult battles while that bastard was flirting with elf girls. He found everything deeply unfair. Pitbull even tried to apologize, but Hirokon punched him in the stomach. Right after that, Hirokon handed him the mission riddle to translate. Pitbull read it carefully and said he believed the answer was related to the Blue Mist Forest. Hirokon was surprised by how fast he responded and asked if he had studied the elven language, but Pitbull explained that it was not necessary. He said the text mentioned a place watched by eagles, which pointed to a high region. The blue clouds were not the sky, but the typical mist of the forest. He even teased that Hirokon should stop playing games for a bit and try reading a few books now and then, like he did. The elf girls immediately jumped all over Pitbull, saying they loved smart men. Later on, Hirokon got even more frustrated and started complaining mentally, calling the other guy a smart bastard and cursing everything. The little skeletons, noticing Hirokon's mood, approached to comfort him, saying it was okay to be single. They were cute for a moment, but ended up getting beaten right after. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Smogrian, a giant worm that lived in the depths of the Blue Mist Forest. It was a level 110 creature that tried to devour Hirokon with its two mouths, but he dodged with ease, slashed its neck, and killed it shortly after, even though he was completely covered in poison. Before all that, Pitbull had warned that the region was difficult even for hunters from the top 30 guilds. Many went there just to farm. Even so, Hirokon saw no one else around at that moment. Then, a massive creature approached and asked which group he was affiliated with. Hirokon assumed it was someone from a guild and replied that he was not affiliated with anyone. That was when the being declared that in that case, he was an intruder. Suddenly, the entire field around them changed. Hirokon was transported to a dark forest, lit only by an eclipse. There stood Avon, his former companion, now corrupted, who declared that intruders must be eliminated. Hirokon realized that he was part of the main quest, but as soon as they clashed swords, he noticed Avon was extremely powerful. When he tried summoning his skeletons, they were all destroyed effortlessly, like stale popcorn. Furious, Hirokon asked how he dared to destroy his little skeleton babies and charged in, landing multiple strikes on the enemy's body. But it was useless. Avon regenerated completely, as if nothing had happened. The system then informed him that physical attacks were ineffective against that kind of entity. Hirokon decided to summon his skeleton mage, but before the spell was even launched, the enemy destroyed the mage with a single blow. He started to realize he was not just facing a strong opponent. Avon dodged all spells and resisted everything. To make it worse, Hirokon had never fought this creature before, not even in his past life. It felt as risky as jumping off a cliff. Knowing that, he decided to use everything he had. He threw his golem, but Avon dodged it easily. Even so, Hirokon's skeleton army attacked with the Helmet of Madness, the Curse of Laziness, and the Corrosive Spirit. Still, Avon predicted every move and defeated the skeletons with a single strike each. Once again, he traded sword blows with Hirokon, who could not even counterattack. He was thrown far with a kick. When he recovered and regained some distance, he summoned his golem once more. This time, the golem grabbed Avon, but even then, he managed to counterattack, stabbing Hirokon through the abdomen. But that was all part of the plan. Hirokon had already predicted this situation, and after being struck, touched the enemy's blade, placing a curse on his body that prevented him from moving. That gave an opening for his skeleton mage army to attack. They launched a storm of flames at the enemy. The attack was effective, and the system confirmed the end of the mission mission, granting Hirokhan the title of Destroyer of Corruption. After drinking a health potion, Hirokhan noticed that Avon was still alive, covered in smoke but standing. Confused, he wondered how the mission had been completed if the enemy was still there. But Avon, instead of attacking, turned his sword on himself and struck his own head, breaking the mask. He asked to be killed before the corruption took over again. Avon explained that he had also been part of the Order, just like Hirokhan, but during a previous mission, he was captured by the power of corruption and turned into a mindless zombie. He begged Hirokhan to kill him once and for all. Hirokhan calmly approached and said a few comforting words. He said that Avon was the most powerful opponent he had ever faced, which meant he must have been even stronger when he was still human. He wondered if it would not be enough to just defeat the source of the corruption to fix everything. Maybe, if he had the tiara of purification with him, he could have saved Avon. But unfortunately, he did not have it. Avon thanked him, saying that Hirokhan seemed like a good person, and that made him happy. Then, without hesitation, he pulled Hirokhan's sword and drove it into his own chest, saying he would leave the rest to him, his successor in the Order. After that, Avon collapsed, leaving behind his sword and half of the mask, completing another mission for Hirokhan. Outraged, Hirokhan declared that he deeply hated that game. Later, Syl was observing the destruction caused by Hirokhan and wondered why he was working with the Red Bulls instead of with her, since she could offer him anything he wanted. Heichi, who was with her, commented that his lady only wanted to recruit talented people, but deep down, it seemed like she had a fixation on the Mask of Heiho. He also said he had a bad feeling about it and suggested that they leave immediately. But suddenly, Single from Hands appeared out of nowhere. Neither Princess Syl nor Heichi noticed where that man had come from. She questioned why she should talk to someone she did not even know. But Single, from the Hands organization, calmly approached and made a direct proposal. He asked if she would like to get rid of the Mask of Heiho once and for all. The question took Syl by surprise, but she showed some interest in that unexpected conversation. And that is it for today's story. We hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, which is very important, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next episodes.